OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
All right. You're very welcome along this morning. It is Wednesday. It's Thursday morning. It is Thursday morning. We're over the hump, Eoin. We're nearly there. It's our first week back. It's been a long, interminable week, and there's been plenty for us to get our teeth stuck into.
Today's your Friday, basically. Your lie-in is on a Friday. So this is your last.
I work late on a Friday evening. There's another radio show called Off the Ball. It goes out on News Talk in the evenings.
But no, all work is easy if you're not getting up early.
I mean, look, there's definitely party like our early morning parties.
Mm-hmm. I would totally agree with that.
You should see our pre-production meetings. They are lit as everybody snorts the coffee.
We are just we're from 7:30 to 9:30. Just a massive come down.
Speaking of which, there's a book called The Psychopath Test by John Ronson, and one of the things that's missing from it is: do you go to pre-season? What's your cup called? Ours is the O'Byrne Cup, as I remembered during the week live on air. What's yours called?
The McGrath Cup.
The McGrath Cup. Mm-hmm. The legend, Mr. McGrath. Mm-hmm. A good old fashioned Gale.
Yeah, you're definitely correct about those two things.
What did he do?
It's
definitely he. Anyway,
just a great Gale.
Anyway, you were at it in a part of the world I don't even know. I actually thought you were doing the show from home this morning because you went to the match last night, and I assumed that you would you would literally phone it in today.
Yeah.
But, it's metaphorically phoning it in. You're here in person. You were at the Kerry match last night.
Yeah. Like, half the reason is that it's easier. They're playing Tipperary away, and I guess if you're based in Dublin, getting to Tip is actually not that bad.
Right.
Roads are good in this part of the world, it turns out.
Yeah, there's money.
Yeah, there is money.
They're good in Mayo too. P. Flynn, he wasn't just managing 3 gaffs, he was managing to get a motorway to his house as well.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think the Healy Rays can claim the credit for the M7, unfortunately, and the M8, obviously. But
so where were you? Temple Toohey?
Temple Toohey, yeah, got moved away from Thurles. I'm not quite sure. It was never due to be in Semple Stadium. It was due to be in Dr. Morris Park, the one that's in the shadow of Semple Stadium. So I think that would have been a little bit of a twisting of the knife anyway, being like, you can't go into the good fields, but you can play here.
Where is Temple Toohey?
Temple Toohey it's in County Tipperary, close
it's a big old county.
Close to the Laois border.
Oh, right.
Yeah, so relatively close to Erlingford, relatively close to Rathdowney,
Kilkenny. That part
the Laois, Kilkenny, Tipperary triumvirate. So that corner of the world, I had to reverse, I think, for a full mile at one stage because a tractor was coming against me, and that guy was not reversing for me. So I mean, it was a sort of welcome to the Midlands moment, and Temple Toohey is an unreal setup actually, and I suspect it won't be the last time Kerry will play McGrath Cup there, game there, or any county there, for example. And we managed to get welcomed with open arms into Temple Bar last night, the Temple Bar, which is the main
bar in Temple Toohey.
In Temple Toohey, yeah, great spot, would highly recommend it.
Should do an OB from there.
100%. It is one of the most genuine places in Ireland, and it just screams pre-season GAA. Yes, you may have your fancy floodlights and your great warm-up pitch across the road, but this is an old-fashioned GAA bar. It's great.
Okay, so the game was between Kerry and Tipperary, right? And it's the McGrath Cup, and it was under lights. What was the atmosphere like? It was you and 3 other guys, 3 other people in the crowd?
And there was a scattering, maybe a handful of other Kerry people. Like when Tipperary got their 5 points, they were kind of obviously the biggest 5 moments in terms of the crowd making noise. There wasn't a great Kerry crowd there, so there wasn't much of an atmosphere when Kerry ended up winning by 21 points.
21 points.
Yeah, it was 21 in the end or more. The spread was 14, and when Kerry announced their team sheet yesterday, we probably should have put something down on that because they were always going to win by a healthy margin. Something's not right when Kerry are taking the McGrath Cup more seriously than Limerick and Tipperary because they've hockeyed them both out the gate the last 2 weeks.
Right.
Yes, they're better than them, but it did seem the last 2 weeks that Kerry are taking this thing a bit more seriously than they ordinarily would.
So Michael Verney has a story on the back of the Irish Independent this morning. A particularly busy day for the MTU Kerry pair of Tony Brosnan and Jack Savage. MTU?
Munster Technological University.
Okay, so they're
the old Tralee IT.
Okay, so as they helped the Kingdom College, so they helped their college team to a surprise Sigerson Cup victory over UCD yesterday afternoon. So they played Sigerson yesterday afternoon in Tralee, and then they went to Temple Toohey in the evening and played for Kerry in a very important game, very, very important game, a 21-point victory against Tipperary in the McGrath Cup semi-final. It seems a bit weird, doesn't it? So you play Sigerson, which you take really seriously because it's your college and it's like a competitive knockout match. It's the time of the year. And then you put them in a car and you drive them up to Tip and you play them again, and then they have to go back, and then they're back into daily life again. 2 matches in a day. Both players scored in the 2 matches, and Brosnan showed his resilience as the Dr. Crokes forward had to be temporarily replaced due to a knock in the earlier game. Now, I don't really know enough about the ins and outs of the rules. They change so often, it's hard to keep up. But you can't get injured and be temporarily replaced for many reasons. What are the reasons you can be temporarily replaced? What?
But it's going to be one or two things. It's going to be blood or head.
Okay, so he might have had a cut, or he might have had a head injury. We don't know, and
it has been reported in the Indo that it's been a head injury that he came off for and came back on for. Yeah.
Okay, so it's a head injury that you have to be temporarily taken off and put back on, and then you stick him in a car and you drive. He's saying Michael Burney. He's done the Google Maps. I don't know. It's a 400 kilometre round trip is what he's saying, and then you make him play again in the evening. Jack O'Connor says, I'm just delighted with the lads' attitude again. It would be easy come up here and be a little bit off, but they were on the money from the beginning and just showed tremendous hunger and attitude, and I'm delighted with that. Tony and Jack were tremendous. I didn't ask them to come up at all. They wanted to be involved. They volunteered themselves. That's great to see, because those lads are mad to get every minute they can in a Kerry jersey, which is great. So where's the player welfare in this? Where's the looking out for your players? Where's the not flogging the players? Where's the showing respect for the Sigerson and the training that they've done with their colleges? It feels like are they both nailed on starters, or do they feel that they have to get in early and make sure that they don't lose any, to display their commitment to Jack, because Jack's the man? Is that it?
Yeah.
It seems, I don't know. This does not seem in keeping with how everybody has spoken about player welfare, and I'd love to see a statement from the GPA today about this. Stop playing players twice in one day. And if look, maybe it was a cut, but I suppose if he's off for a blood sub and he's cut, you wouldn't be making him play a match that evening. But if he was off for a head injury, there's no way he should be playing again. Like, if in doubt, sit them out, but make them travel 400 kilometres round trip, and this doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, I found it weird that they were named in the team sheet before the game last night. I found it stranger when we looked across and we saw them sitting down in the stand. It was definitely stranger again when Kerry were winning by 16, 17 points and they both come on to play, and Brosnan ends up kicking 2 points. And from their perspective, there is a carrot dangling in front of them, because I suppose
they can't not go in some ways. If you're if it's even floated, if there's even a madness of a suggestion, somebody needs to be saying, look, we know who you are. You can show us in training next week. We'll have a scout in Tralee at the game against UCD. We'll have somebody watching that match. Don't you worry.
But this point that I'm about to make doesn't matter. But also, they've both played either league or championship for Kerry in the past. It's not like these guys have never played for Kerry before. Granted, not under Jack O'Connor, but they have played for the county before, and people will know what they're made of, and also people will be able to watch the stream of the game.
It's ridiculous behaviour by Kerry. It is. There's no other way. You have to look after your players, and the notion that they volunteered for it. Like, sometimes someone has to be the grown up and say, not tonight. It's okay. Relax.
Yeah. Like I'm sure that is.
It's fair commitment, and fair play.
Like, you can see what a volunteer was made, because there's maybe a few places opening up in the forwards this year, and the two lads are hungry for it. But and also there were a lot of other Kerry players who were playing in that same match yesterday and across other Sigerson games who weren't involved last night. So I definitely buy that they volunteered, but there has to come a point when the management say stop and actually no, listen, it is fine. Like, I think there was 5 outfield players who came on as substitutes yesterday, which was basically the entire bench. So it was a shoestring squad that went to Temple Tuohy yesterday.
They won by 20 points.
Yeah,
in a pre-season friendly.
Like, I think that they've kind of made their mind up in terms of the squad that they want and the players that they want involved, and a huge cohort of them happen to be involved at Sigerson. But I wonder, actually, do you say to yourself, listen, it's a pre-season competition, let's just bring in a few club players to fill out the bench and just come on.
But here's the other thing, so they volunteer this week, everybody has to volunteer next week. That's the tone is set now, and we think they're great for volunteering.
Do you know what's an interesting, because I tweeted that last night that he played both games, and Conor McGrainer replied to me, who would have experience of being. I'm not sure as he experienced tug of war between DCU and Wicklow, but he's played for both teams in the one season. And he says, I always said player burnout isn't an issue if the players are just playing games and not being expected to train with each team. It's load management. He will have ample recovery time now before out again. It's an issue when a manager wants him to train again fully on Friday. And I think there's probably a truth in that if this is the workload, and as a result of playing 2 games in the one day, that there is, I don't know, they don't have to do a certain amount of training with one of or both teams, certainly with the county team over the next few days, then maybe that's okay. I don't know, but like somebody with experience to say that the training is the issue on top of all of these games. But like it is bizarre. Like, and we're still in the era of COVID as well, where players are driving themselves. It's 188 kilometres from Tralee to Temple Tui. I just checked it there, and then Brosnan has to drive back to Killarney after that as well.
Are they allowed shower at the moment? Are there showers?
I think so.
Yeah, that's all fine.
They were certainly in the dressing room. Yeah.
Okay, all right. Well, look, that's what it's going to be. Is this the equivalent of the early morning training sessions that Pat Gilroy put his Dublin team through to establish the culture? Nothing matters except us. Yeah,
and like, I mean, I suppose those have been.
Here's the thing as well: when Kerry win the All Ireland at the end of the year, they'll be like, "Oh, everything's justified." But maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I don't know. Give us your review. You can get us 0879 180 180. That's the WhatsApp number. You can leave a comment on the YouTube stream. We have a really busy show for you. I'm going to tell you what's coming up. Neil O'Riordan, chief sports writer for the Irish Sun, is going to join us to talk to us about the state of play at the FAI at the moment. He wrote a great piece this week contrasting the facilities that the GAA have with the FAI's determination to continue with the World Cup bid, and how maybe if they spent their time looking at the local facilities as opposed to trying to win a World Cup, that we might have better facilities for our young footballers around the country. Graham Hunter's going to join us. There was a Saudi Clásico last night. The Copa del Rey semi-finals and finals are in Saudi Arabia. Just like the golfers, everybody's taking the money. Sports pages at 8:30. Sports News with John Duggan at 8:40. Then after that, we are going to Australia to talk to Brid Stack. We'll bring in Malcolm O'Kelly's depth chart at 9:10, and we're going to hear from Mark Lawrenson about what he thinks on the Mo Salah transfer at around about 9:30. We do want to talk as well about RG Snyman, who has signed up for another 2 years at Munster. I saw many Munster fans being absolutely thrilled with the news that Snyman, who hasn't played a full game, I don't think, or maybe played one full game before his second cruciate ligament, has signed up for another 2 years. And so it's a long-term project. He'll be at Munster for 4 years by the end of that contract. Is this a risky decision? It definitely feels that way. Alan Quinlan was out yesterday saying that because by showing the commitment to Munster, Snyman has become a Munster legend. But is it good business for the province to double down on the business they've already done? We don't know the ins and outs of the contract, obviously, so maybe there's a paper play element to it. But maybe there isn't. Like, if you're RG Snyman, Dave McIntyre was on the newsround last night saying that he thinks world-class second rows, they don't grow on trees, so there would have been some clubs around the world who are willing to take the risk and make the offer. And obviously Munster had to counter offer, so it'd be interesting to see exactly what the crack is. But you're a Munster fan. You were in Temple Tui last night watching a McGrath Cup game.
McGrath Cup is yeah.
That is like that's the definition of insanity.
Munster. It's interesting, because both of those things could be true. The fact that Munster could be offering a pay-for-play element here, or on the flip side of things as well, that there could have been a whole host of clubs looking out for RG Snyman. We don't know both of those two things, but it does seem to me that, I don't know, have we forgotten that the conversation after the second cruciate was, will Munster have enough patience for RG Snyman? Like, who is committing to who? Is my question in the aftermath of this. I find it astonishing that this is automatically, without being able to gaze into your crystal ball, that this is automatically a massive win for Munster, because the guys barely played. Like, this is a huge risk, I think, from Munster's perspective. I think, like, instead of looking at this from the Munster perspective and saying they should be so thankful that RG Snyman is committed to them, RG Snyman should be so thankful that Munster is committed to him. Like, that's not a reflection whatsoever on the quality of the player, or what Dave McIntyre said yesterday about the importance of having that physicality and that sort of obscene athleticism as a second row. They do not grow on trees. But the facts of the matter, the things we do know, is that this guy has got the worst possible injury on 2 separate occasions, and that is at this point a worrying trend from Munster's perspective. So I think they've shown massive commitment to RG Snyman, and I don't know, I think Munster have become almost a Snyman legend by committing to them rather than committing to him, rather than the other way around. until we can see the future and until we know the ins and outs of this contract, I don't think we can say for sure that this is absolutely brilliant news. Of course, the ceiling is there for it to be phenomenal news, but right now, I don't know. I think it's interesting.
It's very risky.
It is 100. That is a fact. Munster have had to take a risk on a guy who's blown his knee out twice, and they can't afford for him to be injured much longer. You're committing a large part of your budget, so let's definitely going to be paid a lot.
Well, and even if it's pay per play, then if it's pay per play, it's probably less. But you still have to budget for the fact that every penny in the contract will get paid, and so you're committing a huge part of your budget to that for the next 2 years on the basis of hope, and it is hope. And we all let's not get this wrong. If Snyman's knee settles down and he plays 2 seasons for Munster, then Munster are catapulted from a good team into a very good team, and the next coach who comes in will be like, this is amazing. We've got brute force in the second row that allows us to go up against any team in World Rugby. But the whole point of signing players from South Africa is that they're supposed to be able to play almost every minute. The way the global season is working out at the moment, they actually end up being away for quite a large portion of the season too. So you don't have them for the November window, and there's definitely a lot of rugby that they'll be playing for South Africa during the rugby, whatever the tournament's called, they all play in. And I don't know. It feels like, wouldn't they be better off signing players whose international careers are over, or who are just that one little tier below international? And then you're like, well, wouldn't they be just better off giving the opportunity to the players who are coming through the system, who it turns out are really good? Because we've seen the system produce really good players. I don't know. This felt a little bit like this didn't work out. That's okay. We made a mistake. It was really worth taking that punt, but now we're doubling down. Is it the sunk cost that you're trying to buy back?
I hope not. Because that would just be bad business. Like that just would not be a smart way to do it. I really hope that there is maybe a pay for play element here, and that they have tried to try and hedge their bets in this a little bit. But what's interesting here is that is this jubilation around RG Snyman in some quarters, is that detached from the Johan van Graan news? Are a lot of people thinking to themselves, right, Van Graan is gone, and the South African element to Munster Rugby is therefore going to go. We're going to lose De Allende, we're going to lose RG Snyman, Jason Jenkins will be a thing of the past. And I just wonder, should we be just breaking down all those parts, and they're totally different? And I get why Snyman and De Allende in particular are kind of married together in all this, because they were in the same Springbok team, they were signed at the same time.
They've
had vastly different Munster careers.
They have, yeah.
Vastly different Munster careers.
Were they both burned in the fire?
Yes, I think so. I think that Munster really should be going out of their way to ensure that Damien De Allende becomes a player for the future, because the facts of the matter are...
Not De Allende. Munster should be going out of their way to...
Yeah, well, to ensure... Yeah, but
he's gone, though.
But when it comes back to... Sorry, with Snyman.
Yeah.
But when they're going out of their way to actually consider who is the player that has given them the most over the last little while.
It's De Allende.
Well, it's De Allende.
Yeah, but even he's been away for ages. But
he has been. But if we're actually
and
analysing,
he's injured this week.
He's injured this week. But if we're analysing who's actually been on the pitch and who's actually given Munster facts of how good they've been, it's obviously been De Allende. And I think maybe these two things have been married together, and it's like RG Snyman is automatically going to be that quality when he's fully fit. And there's a probability he will be if he puts together a run of fitness. But I think that's just such a big if at the moment, and maybe we're kind of throwing these two lads in together quite a bit in terms of analysing their Munster careers already.
Yeah, I don't know. The Munster fans seem really happy about it, and you really hope that it works out for them, but there is an opportunity cost when you put all your eggs in the basket, and at the moment the basket has proven to be, it has a fragile ACL, so we'll see. We have to wait and see, and we obviously really hope that it works out, because it's transformative if it works out, but it's such a big risk. And Munster's track record of signing these players who are global superstars and then they have injuries goes all the way back to Christian Cullen, and it's like at some point you just say, that didn't work for us, we're moving on, that's unfortunate. But look at these cool, brilliant young players who are going to get loads of game time, and I don't know, we'll see.
Yeah. Personally, I think that the whole idea of holding back academy players, like there's a truth in that. At the same time, I think that if Snyman comes back and is fully fit and is amazing for a while, then that obviously just brings the whole level up completely. And
exactly, but it's just the risk is it's a 50-50. It's not like a 70, 85, 90% success rate. It's like he hasn't played any rugby for you, and you spent hundreds of thousands of euros on this player already. You don't get that money back, even if he plays really well for the next 2 seasons. That money is gone.
Yeah.
So maybe there were no other available candidates out there to take that role, and they thought, okay, even with the injury profile, and maybe they got a hometown discount out of loyalty. Who knows? Who knows exactly what happened? And he's still really young, so as we say, we wish him all the very best in his recovery, and we wish Munster all the very best with that too. But as business decisions go, it's high risk. It's a high wire act. 7:50 this morning if you want to get in touch with us. Very quickly, 1 minute on this. We've been banging on for ages about how sport, all the major sports, we're going to be looking at Drive to Survive and going, what's next, what really should be next. And it turns out that golf made the announcement yesterday, really quickly. The PGA Tour and the 4 majors are all on board, and a slew of the world's top golfers, but not all of them, have agreed to be involved in golf's Drive to Survive, which, you know, could actually be also called Drive to Survive.
Right, it could be.
You know? Probably need to make it Put to Survive, but whatever. The Mail and other newspapers are reporting this morning that tennis have done exactly the same thing. The 4 majors have signed up, and all their top players, the 2 tours, male and female tours, have signed up, and that there may just be a documentary crew with Novak Djokovic at the moment. Now, I don't think there was a documentary crew in the interview room with Border Patrol. Was there?
Like, I mean, as we know famously from daytime reality television, that is something you are allowed to do. So, like, there possibly is. Like, I mean, is it just going to be a recreation of that?
I suspect, though, that the one that we see on TV is sold by the Border Patrol as opposed to the guy coming in with the chicken. Whereas in this instance, the camera crew would have been coming in with the guy with the chicken and the vaccine cert, Maria.
Yeah. It's true. Like, they're both going to be hugely watched TV shows. I think Drive to Survive has set the bar, and I'd be hopeful considering that there are the other 2 sports that are now going to be on stream are both individual sports, and there's a lot of spoiled brats who are very rich involved in both sports as well. But surely we're just going to reach a point of this where everybody becomes unbelievably self-aware, and these documentaries stop being any good.
Do you think so? Is the whole point of the constant surveillance that we are now under not that people aren't self-aware? Like, if you look at all of the videos that emerge where people are doing stuff they're not supposed to be doing, everybody knows they're constantly filmed. Like, when you go to a pub or a nightclub, you're walking in the street, you're being filmed. Like, that's the society that we live in at the moment. Nobody really acts like that, do they?
No, and also, and
the cameras everywhere.
I think it's probably a stretch in terms of society, but like, it's interesting in season 2 of Drive to Survive, there is a very big awareness of Netflix, and, you know, like, and even from Netflix's point of view, like, there's a bit where Daniel Ricciardo says see you next Tuesday and all that, and he's like, you're not going to include that in the documentary and all that, and they include it, and it's like there's a very big self-awareness about what's actually going on here and the dynamic between
intertextuality. Owen, that's what happens, right? So there's a possibility this goes the way of Big Brother, where it becomes completely ridiculous, right?
Yeah.
The first couple of seasons of Big Brother, you're probably too young to remember, were actually quite good.
They were great. Season 1 was fantastic. Nasty Nick.
Exactly.
What a storyline.
But by the 3rd season, everybody was like, where's the camera? What's going on? How do I, you know, and there was strategy involved. But I actually think that there's a possibility that because the outcome of what everybody's trying to achieve isn't just the celebrity through the documentary, and you've no guarantee or control that they're going to use you, I think that, like, in the tennis and the golf world, racing is the one that I think would benefit the most from it, and actually
could do with it.
Yeah, and I think that the access would be excellent. It's not very glamorous, there isn't the sun-kissed.
Don't need the glamour. No. Like, I mean, the glamour is definitely something you take away from Drive to Survive. It's not a reason that you watch it. Like, I mean, seeing very rich people party on a boat in Monaco is definitely something that you take away from the TV show, but it's not going to be the compelling thing about of what's driving you to it. It's the rivalry between the drivers, and I know you've made the point in the past that it's about the sort of the backroom teams and getting an insight to them. I really think it's the star talent. The star talent doing extraordinary things in terms of going to lengths to beat their rivals, and some of the beef that exists between the drivers, even if it has been hammed up by Netflix, I think is the single best thing about that show. and that's what they're going to have to try and recreate with these two TV shows. And I just feel that maybe at a point that reaches a stage of self-awareness, because let's face it, golf already got to that point of being uber self-aware about the beef that was happening last year. And I know Bryson's not signed up for this, but Brooks is, and I think he's a shrewd operator, knows what he's got to do to come away from this Netflix show as a hero of the people.
Yeah. I mean, what a perverted world that would be. If you want to get in touch with us this morning, we'd love to hear from you. 087 9180 180 is the WhatsApp number. You can give us a comment on the YouTube channel. At 7:55 this morning, though, I'm delighted to say Chief Sports Writer with the Irish Sun, Neil O'Riordan, is with us. Neil, good morning to you. How you getting on?
John?
I wanted to talk to you specifically about a piece that you wrote this week, which you say is a now almost annual piece for you, where you talk about the quality of facilities that the FAI have, but nice just juxtaposition this year with the continuing bid for Ireland to host part of a World Cup, where we're propping up England's bid, and I just thought it was really interesting to try and tease this out at the moment about where we are when it comes to our facilities.
When you talk about quality facilities,
we're getting a bit of feedback there. We might come back to you in just a second, Neil. Our line is echoing on your side. Just a bit of problem with the line there. So I'll tell you a little bit more about it. So obviously, what's the official name of the Aerodome?
Airdome.
Airdome?
The Connacht Airdome.
Like sponsored by Apple?
Well, I mean, I think it should just be called the Mercedes-Benz Superdome and just be done with it. Just completely rip it off completely. But the NUIG Connacht Airdome is the official name. So
obviously it made its proper debut on TV over the last while, but I think it's open 18 months, is it?
I think so, yeah. There's definitely been. This is not the first taste that people have got of the Airdome. It's just the first kind of competitive football and a slew of matches there. Yeah, okay. Neil, I think you can hear us now properly, can you?
Yeah, can do.
Yeah, Zoom had a bit of a meltdown, but it's all been sorted. Anyway, look, instead of me explaining your piece, you're much better at talking about this. So why feel the need at the moment to juxtapose the quality of facilities that the GAA have managed to get with the ongoing campaign for Ireland to host a part of the World Cup?
Well, I just thought it was interesting because, it was the first competitive inter-county fixture, so there was a lot of publicity around the Airdome. And at the same time, the stories were coming out about how, it looked like the focus might shift from bidding from the 2030 World Cup, which they had been told that maybe that's not going to be a runner for them, to the 2028 European Championships. And with that in mind, I thought it would be a decent opportunity as a break point for the FAI to say, actually, no, let's not proceed with this, because I think we've kind of been obsessed with these kind of big events, and it was kind of used or misused as almost a barometer for how healthy Irish football was. We hosted the Europa League final in the Aviva Stadium, isn't that great? And, well, no, not really. Like, with two Portuguese teams, which didn't really appeal to anyone, and it didn't have any effect in terms of positive effect really in terms of Irish football. And again, I'm just kind of a bit perplexed that when there's so much to be done in Irish football, the FAI is emerging from this huge mess, and there's so much work to be done. I don't know why you would kind of take on board an extra project like that, which will inevitably demand extra resources and attention, when I think the focus should be on building from the bottom up. And a key part of that is facilities. Like all the core objectives that were mentioned in the kind of outline draft strategy, about a healthy national league, developing women and girls football, proper pathways, like they're all underpinned by facilities. You can't do any of that without having good facilities, and for the main part, the facilities in Irish football just aren't good enough.
And they're not good enough, really, from the top down. The League of Ireland facilities is still kind of one of the most outstanding sores in Irish football, that actually it's not very comfortable to go to matches, and it's hard to bring a crowd when the facilities aren't there. However, we have seen that if you build the facilities like you do in Tala, the crowds will follow.
Exactly, and there have been some improvement, like the showgrounds in Sligo has improved a lot. The Brandywell and Turner's Cross, so there is movement on that. It's not like it's slow, and that's a frustration. And I guess one of the things to bear in mind too is, like, Dalymount Park will be rebuilt, but like the whole thing, that was a big thing that was tied in with Euro 2020. We co-host Euro 2020. We're going to get Dalymount Park rebuilt as a legacy of. Not a sod has been turned on that. Like, it's only at the kind of design stage. And similarly, there's a planned centre of excellence for Glanmire in Munster, which was due to be part of that Euro 2020 legacy, and the same thing, nothing's happened. So there are projects there which can be moved on, but they haven't moved on. And I don't know. I just feel like hosting a major tournament, it's kind of designed to appeal to the event junkie element of Ireland, which is fine if everything else is in order. But everything else isn't in order. So why don't we just get around to sorting that first?
When you mention Dalymount and Glanmire, Neil, and the legacy projects that they are as a result of Euro 2020, would that have been the truth had there been no COVID? Like, would there have been a certain amount of UEFA payments that actually would have generated enough income for those pretty big ticket projects to actually happen?
Well, it wasn't solely dependent on UEFA money as such. And COVID has obviously been an issue in terms of stalling some things as well. I think the cost for Glanmire was €9 million, and that was, although it was, that was kind of been driven by the FAI. And in fairness, you'd be loath to give him credit, but John Delaney was kind of a driving force in terms of pushing the Dalymount project onto the agenda. Things were kind of drifting there with Bowes. But it will be a Dublin City Council project, but the FEI played its part in kind of getting that get together. But it's one thing kind of saying you're going to do it, it's another thing doing it, and that hasn't happened. I do think the financial benefits of hosting or co-hosting tournaments are generally overstated. And we're well used to costs here overrunning, so whatever needed to be done in terms of training grounds for teams or whatever else, that may have ended up costing more than we anticipated. Like just in terms of human resources, a lot of FEI staff would have been essentially seconded to that project. So that's time they're spending away from Irish football and such. So, there's a cost there, and whether you get that back in terms of the exchequer is debatable.
Well, that's the whole point, though, isn't it? It's about the brain space that the organisation has. It's a limited organisation. Not everybody fully understands exactly what the scale and size and the operation in the FAI is. It's a medium-sized business, really. And what we need is every coaching development officer and every schools officer really busy and active and inspired. And if they're actually being asked, or other people in the organisation are being asked to do stuff which is based around maybe getting some matches involving teams not involving our country to come here at some nebulous point in the future, then they're not actively working on increasing participation, trying to lobby for better facilities, all of the stuff that actually goes into making the organisation better.
Exactly, and not like, this is an organisation which has suffered redundancies. It's an organisation which has had its employees have suffered pay cuts. Morale, I don't think is great. But like a lot of them are really committed to what they're doing, which is developing Irish football. And I think I know for a fact that people in the FAI will be frustrated by pursuing these bids because they also see it as a distraction. It's great on the big day, and you can have all your dignitaries there, in the VIP box, and showing off the Aviva Stadium, fine stadium. But it's a millstone around the neck of Irish football in terms of the cost. So, I think there's a frustration on the part of people within the FEI too. They see the work that needs to be done. They work hard, but they are working with already limited resources, with not great facilities at times. And, I think they would have a clearer idea where the priorities lie than maybe the people at the top of the organisation sometimes.
What's your assessment at the moment of how the new FAI is actually getting on? Because it was mired in a post-Delaney era controversy. There were questions about governance. There were committees that had been set up but had never met. Strong criticism from people within the League of Ireland of the Roy Barrett chairmanship. Since then, they have appointed the CEO, and things seem to have calmed down a little bit. But at the same time, it's still a fairly leaky organisation. So how are we getting on post-Delaney?
I think things are improving. They're heading in the right direction. I think a key kind of measure of them will be the kind of strategic plan that they unveiled. As I said last July, it will be unveiled early New Year. There's been no mention of it so far, but I think people are interested to see where they see the priorities, what kind of resources might be invested in those. So it's kind of a wait and see. To be honest, I don't think it's been that leaky. I think they have tightened up there, like all the stuff around Stephen Kenny's contract. So I know there were a lot of reports saying one thing or the other, but I'm not sure how based on kind of solid information they were. I thought they kept it quite tight after the board meeting with regards to Stephen Kenny's contract. So I think there is a sense of improvements. There's still a lot to be done, of course. You can't underestimate where they were coming from in terms of how bad a position they were in. I think Jonathan Hill comes across quite well. I think he's been open enough in terms of his dealings. There's been some improvements on women's football front in terms of the Sky deal and the equal match fees. So there are positives there, and I think you would kind of have to acknowledge that progress. But I think the big tests are still to come.
You mentioned Stephen Kenny's contract. Do we know when we might hear any news on that?
No. I don't think it's a major issue. I think these things just tend to drag on. Like, if you remember, even with Martin O'Neill, it just kept saying, it'll be done, or it's been done. But actually, it was kind of months before it actually was. But I don't think it's an issue. I guess the synchronising all the contracts of his backroom staff, many of whom came in at different points compared to him, is probably, there's an element of kind of tidying up there. But,
okay. So we shouldn't be worried about that or concerned about the fact that it hasn't happened just yet. It's just this is. I don't think
so. Any suggestion that that's an issue there.
Okay. In terms of the strategic plan, because this is their opportunity to unfurl what their ambition is. Like I think you mentioned Damien Duff when he was comparing the GAA facilities and the football facilities, and like Duffer's got a very unique take on the world and a unique communication style that certainly ruffled some feathers, and when he talked about Páirc Uí Chaoimh and the Liam Miller testimonial that time as well, the dinosaurs in the GA knew exactly what he was doing. What is the right course of action for the FAI? How do they start getting parity of esteem when it comes to local funding at local level?
Well, I think a big issue is clubs probably need to collaborate and possibly even merge. Somebody's kind of made the point before that, and I know from where I live in Dublin, I can look around and say, okay, Plunkett's is Navan Road, Nafina is Glasnevin, Brendan's is Grange Gorman, and they are the clubs. But you look around in terms of football clubs, and there's loads, like in Cabral, Bowes, Dingle, Phoenix, and the problem is that because there's more football clubs, you're looking for facilities for all of them. Obviously, I assume government departments look at the overall spend of sport, and if you have multiple clubs looking for a limited amount of money, clearly the money is less. So I think the GA have been better in terms of having one big strong club in an area rather than several kind of weaker clubs. I think that needs to be looked at, whether it's, as I say, maybe clubs to keep their own identity, but they look to have shared facilities. Also, the academy plan is going to be huge, what they're going to do there. The clubs have responded to some extent to the introduction of national leagues by appointing full-time people into academies. Bohemians were the latest, appointing Craig Sexton, and lots of other clubs have done with Shamrock Rovers, Liga Rovers, Cork City, and that's all positive. But I think there's an acknowledgement that we can't really have 19 or 20 academies of a requisite level in this country because the football industry isn't there. How do you manage that? Are you talking about regional academies being kind of run by the FAI, or some kind of joint academies between clubs? That's going to require facilities and an open-mindedness in terms of where we go with that, and that's all the more important because of the implications of Brexit, with players not being able to go as it stands until they're 18. There is an interesting point on that, which is going to be mentioned too, as to whether the FAI would seek a derogation from that. I think that's going to be optics-wise very important how they handle that, because if they do pursue that derogation, that's an admission that we cannot develop our own players. We are incapable of looking after the development of players in this country between the ages of 16 and 18. And that's quite the admission to make. I think most people who are involved in football would say it has been incapable as a country. We did hand them over to Britain essentially at the age of 16. But if we are making these improvements, introducing the National League, appointing full-time people, we've got to strive to be in a position where we can do it. We all know at times the horrific tales of kids going over, at the age of 16, not making it, coming back broken individuals. We've got to aspire to do better. We've got to believe that we are capable of doing that, but it will require huge funding. But I think there is also an acknowledgement within government that they have to be part of that too. That what we need to do can't be done without government help, and that's a start.
I fundamentally believe that they've made a mistake in the lobbying over the last 30, 40 years by not saying we're an industry. It's always been, well, we're a sports organisation. The way horse racing always said, well, we're an industry, we create employment, we're very important to local communities. If you go to any small town in England, there's a football industry there because somebody somewhere along the way played professional football, and as a result that club is seen or has at least some kind of sense of we could be part of the football pyramid. In Ireland, the football pyramid is so diffuse that it's been very difficult. But if they could just start telling everybody, we are an industry. This is a full-time, professional, genuine career that people can start at 16 and you can become a coach and work until you're 65. And it's a reasonable, realistic idea that would be something that employs 10 to 15,000 people in Ireland. Away you go. But I haven't heard them talk like that.
No, I mean, that's one aspect of it, but the other is just pure participation, and in terms of the societal good of that. And we're kind of well aware of the challenges posed by obesity levels in Ireland. So yes, on the one hand you could say we're an industry, on the other say, listen, we've got a problem with obesity in Ireland. We're trying to keep kids active, help us keep kids active, and you'll get the returns on that multiple times. So yes, you're right. You can present the business case, but there's also the societal good case, and I think a lot of times maybe that's a bit more persuasive, or it should be more persuasive, and it's an argument that GAA get across very well. Perhaps we've been less good in football in doing it, but that has to be acknowledged. Activity is huge, and the FAI is the biggest facilitator in terms of participation of activity in Ireland, so that has to be recognised. The value of that has to be recognised. Yeah, and the Teneo, the annual survey, had soccer level with GAA for the first time, I think, in their records as the most popular sport in the country. Last point, right? The League of Ireland, I think, when you kind of step back from it, it has a billionaire owner in Derry. It has one of our greatest ever footballers cutting his management teeth at Shelbourne. It has now immediately a nasty rivalry between Dundalk and St. Pat's, the Cup champions. Unfortunately, you do have a very powerful team in Rovers that might just overshadow everything. You've got Bows, who are the hipsters' choice. You've actually got loads of stories around the league that should this season be able to suck in the passer-by sports fan. Yeah, definitely. There have been some kind of high-profile departures from the league too, with Johnny Kenny from Sligo Rovers. But that, again, it just underlines that the talent is there, and it can be hard to kind of get that message across to people who don't have an interest in the league. But Liam Scales playing for Celtic when he was playing for Shamrock Rovers earlier in the year. The talent is there, like you say. There are all these kind of subplots, and a lot of clubs have done good stuff in the community too. They're better at kind of laying roots now and kind of realising that they are more than a first team. So there's good engagement there, and it'll be interesting to see if we have hopefully a full season without any crowd restrictions. How that kind of those interest levels or interesting stories kind of manifest themselves in terms of attendances over the year.
Neil, great stuff. Thanks a million for joining us. Cheers.
Thanks, Jared. Take care.
It's Neil Reardon, Chief Sports Writer with the Irish Sun there, giving us his thoughts on the state of play at the league at the moment. 13 minutes past 8 this morning. Graham Hunter's up next. Before that though, during this ad break, we have a preview of this week's Club Championship show in association with AIB. Will O'Callaghan and Killian Whelan are joined by Fintan O'Toole from the 42.ie to discuss Ballygunner's massive Munster win and much more.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
Off the ball's the best, number one.
It's the GOAT of sports apps.
Talk about the greatest of all time. Nathan, Big Joe. Big Joe's the greatest of all time. He's the GOAT. We know it.
So
every single time. Yes.
It's tough going. It's tough for my ego. I'm going to say I'm the Djokovic of this scenario.
I love it.
This is OTB Sports Radio. Download the OTB Sports app now.
It was a real kind of statement of intent. I think summed up by the scoring stats that they put up. Generally Munster club finals over the last couple of years have been pretty well contested. I mean, the only thing really comparable to this was what Napier Street did in 2013 against Six Mile Bridge, doing that by 18 points. And as this game headed into injury time, Ballygunner were up by that same margin, and then they conceded the 1-1. But yeah, right from the start, they were really, really, really on it. I suppose just the moment that Dessie Hutchinson got the goal, and then like they were 6 points clear about the first quarter, then the 2 goals right in the third quarter to really kind of put the game to bed. And like for a game that I'd say a lot of neutrals were kind of looking forward to, it ended up being far more one-sided. But from a Ballygunner point of view, it gives them a serious bounce now going into the All-Ireland series. And the fact that that's only in 2 weeks' time, I think is going to be of a benefit to them, that it isn't the usual kind of traditional thing they would have been used to when they previously won in 2018. They were waiting 2.5 months probably for your All-Ireland Club semi-final. And with the form that they showed on Sunday in Páirc Uí Chaoimh, they're going to be heading into that with a lot of confidence.
With prices from only €289 for fully comprehensive car insurance, everyone's making the jump to getsetgo.ie. New business policies only. Prices subject to minimum premiums. T's and C's apply. MCL Insurance Services Limited Trading is getsetgo.ie is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
A Saudi Clásico last night saw Real Madrid beat Barcelona by 3-2. I'm delighted to say Graham Hunter is with us to try and give us some assessment of where Barca are at the moment in the Xavi revolution. I'm sure they're never happy about being beaten by Real Madrid, but there was a bit of spikiness and a bit of there was something to cling on to for them at least last night, was there?
No, it was much better than that, Chair. It was a classic Clásico. They've been a little bit bloodless over the last 2 or 3. They still lost. It's the first time they've lost 5 times in a row to Real Madrid since between 1962 and 1964, so it's a big number. They're out of a competition where there are medals and a trophy. It's a much better competition in terms of the format. It's great that it's in Saudi Arabia. After what that regime did to Khashoggi, the journalist, in the Turkish embassy. But the clubs will accept the money that's offered to them. They're all getting paid upwards of $6 million to be there, all 4 clubs, Atleti, Real Madrid and Barcelona. And last night's Clásico showed that it's a rarely spoken about phenomenon, but if you get your good players back, you play better. Do you know what I mean, Joe?
Well, just explain that, because go on, yeah.
I know. It's revolutionary. Ansu's been out, the youngest goal scorer for Spain, the youngest goal scorer in Champions League history, the youngest goal scorer in Barcelona's history. He's been out half a season. He was back. He scored again. Every time he comes back, he immediately scores. So there's a big deal now for Barcelona to see whether they can keep him fit immediately, not long term, but immediately. Pedri was back. In the meantime, I've been on your show raving about Nico and particularly Gavi. Immediately after I did the first time, Gavi was picked to play in the semi-final of the Nations League and stood out in a victory over Italy. And Nico, if anything, has maybe edged him a little bit in recent weeks because the two of them are absolutely exceptional. Pedri came back and just made them look like Ford Cortinas compared to a Rolls Royce. That's how good he is. You've had evidence of that over last season where he played so many games for club and country. When he came on in the second half, Barcelona were a completely different side. And irrespective of whether you care about their fortunes or not, particularly if you're just a neutral who wants to tune in and watch Barcelona every now and again, when Pedri plays football is a joy. So looking at it, and there were other really good supporting actors, if not best supporting actors, because they were all in white, the best supporting actors. That Araujo's performance was absolutely exceptional. Piqué was clever. Alves coped. Luke de Jong scored again. Frankie de Jong came off, and really, to be honest with you, if you had a button where you could press and activate the transfer market in the way you want to, Barcelona should cash in on both Memphis Depay and Frankie de Jong right now. And the key one, if I don't know if you had time in your busy schedule to see the games there, but I know your taste in football, and I think you'd agree with me that there's been a huge amount of appreciation for Dembele during the game and in the vast media coverage that Clásico commands. And Dembele is somebody for whom I've had a lot of interest and affection just watching him play, because he's startling, he's extraordinary. There are days when his pace and explosive eruption of acceleration and tricks and skills and shooting from distance make him at least Neymar-esque. And there are days when he looks like a competition winner. He was on the ball an awful lot last night and did next to nothing. And he's taken a lot of praise because he was the Blaugrana shirt that was the ball carrier an awful lot. He was often an outlet. And, you know, he looked as if his feet had been grafted on recently in large parts of the position that he had. And to my taste, it's more about quality than show or percentage time on the ball. So I find him an anomaly. I think he played like the man who's not sure if he's staying or going. He's at contract at the end of the season. There's absolutely no question that there remains at 24 an extraordinary footballer, an extraordinary athlete hidden in there. I don't think it's best that continues at Barcelona. Until last night, at least Xavi seems to think differently. They'd like to keep him. He is still, somebody who, if you get right, it's a big asset. But overall, the headlines today are beaten with honour, Barca are back in Catalonia at least, and all the Madrid papers, while celebrating Real Madrid's victory and move on to the final, which will be against Atleti or Athletic. All of them, plus Valverde, the winning goal scorer, and Ancelotti, the coach, speak about Barcelona's performance because it was the best this season by a distance. Had they played this way all season, they wouldn't be 17 points behind the league and they wouldn't be out of the Champions League. So perfect, no. Really raw in that some of the players are just back from either injury or COVID, and there remains work to do in terms of clinical finishing. But a fabulous football match, and Barcelona played their part in it.
You mentioned the kids who've come through, Graham, recently, and I guess it's just been so unfortunate how they haven't managed to get them all on the pitch together at the same time. So that's a really interesting and exciting prospect over the next little while. What about Ferran Torres then, and his arrival at the club, and how excited Barcelona fans are for him in the short term?
I think they know, irrespective of the tuition that he got under Pep Guardiola at Manchester City, and irrespective of his frankly astounding goals per game record for Spain, they suffered playing against him when he was at Valencia. They know that this is a class act. You ask about the fans, I'd have to say I know him reasonably well. We've had 5 or 6 interviews, once or twice with a little bit of extended time to chat off camera, and he's a character. He's smart, he's ambitious, he's definitely a good pro, and the talent's there. Last night was a little bit of a surprise, given how long he's been injured and the fact that he's had COVID too, that he started the game. And halfway through that first half, you could see him rosy-cheeked and a little bit struggling with the pace of the game. And he put a shift in, he put effort in. He was on the ball occasionally and he showed for the ball. So positionally, wanting the ball under pressure, but also knowing how to make space for yourself. These are crucial assets if you're going to be playing for Xavi's version of Barcelona, at least. And by half-time, he looked pretty knackered. And I think we've got there's time in training for him to come back into the side looking like the Ferran Torres that he really can be. But, they still have huge aspirations. I have no idea whether they've got either the wherewithal or the persuasive powers to get Haaland. But they're in the race. They want him. Raul, who I think was in hospital last night, Haaland's agent, is certainly talking to Joan Laporta. So if you think right now about the choices up front, whereby Ansu and Ferran and Abde, and at the moment Dembele and Ilias, and then you throw in Haaland. For Ferran Torres, he must be looking around himself and thinking, I've made a good choice here, because rather than at City, when fit and on form, he'll play most every game, I would say. Most football needs rotation. And behind him, he's got Gavi and Nico and Pedri and Busquets supplying passes to him. It's a prospect that I think strengthens Barcelona. He's the right character. I think that's a really big deal, because there are some still in the squad and there are some who are departed now who have not had the right character over the last years. Winning character, ambitious character, dedicated, understanding the philosophy character. Ferran Torres has it. So in the coming weeks and months, I'd expect that the weather check that you take every now and again will say, things are sunny at Barcelona for young Torres.
A, how have they managed to afford Torres, and B, how are they even in the conversation to potentially sign Erling Haaland?
First of all, lots of players have taken wage cuts. Piqué was the one who did the most dramatic, and when he showed his payslip on social media the other day, it was to combat an idea about how much a specific writer said this is how much the players are paid. And Piqué showed his half-year payslip, which was 2-point-something million. Now, we'd all love that if we could have that. But for him, it showed how much of a pay cut he's taken. And there have been mirror images by Jordi Alba, by Sergio Roberto, by Ter Stegen. But one of the devices that the financial fair play system, which is computerized for La Liga, works is that if you can lower the wage bill, particularly in the instant, then you have greater spending power in terms of who you can sign, who you can pay, and whether you can register them. So Umtiti took a longer contract, was awarded a longer deal till I think 2026, but agreed that because the contract was longer, he would lower his wages. So right now he's been paid gross and net less than he was a week ago. And that little piece of arithmetic allowed them to register Ferran Torres. They've shipped some players out as well. So when Coutinho left, that brought them close to the edge. He's not the only player that they've moved out. That brought them close to being able to register Ferran Torres, and Umtiti's effort made there. As far as Haaland is concerned, I think we're right to be sceptical both about their ability to afford him, but also their whether it's morally right when you're over $1 billion in debt. You're about to borrow another $1 billion to renew the stadium. But they're dedicated to the chase. They've shown themselves to be extremely quick at now, this regime, the new regime, which has been in 3/4 of a year. And Mateo Alemán, who was Ferran Torres' chief executive when he was at Valencia, is the guy who's making numbers crunch. So if you asked me to do a forensic accountant's job about giving you a spreadsheet about why they could afford Haaland, then I'd say politely, move on to the next item. But I don't think it's all bluster. I think that by summertime, I think that first of all they have borrowed enough money that they can make the bid that would trigger the release from Dortmund. It's about convincing the agent and the player, paying a huge sum. I mean, something ridiculous like 30-40 million to Haaland's father and to Minarola. These types of things are for a longer debate. They're sickening numbers if you think about it in terms of general society at the moment. But I don't think that it's only bluster. I think they think they're in the race properly. Then it's down to the footballer. He may have no taste whatsoever for being part of a rebuild. He may have no taste for whatsoever of facing a Real Madrid side sporting Kylian Mbappe. Equally, he may want to say, and I think this is part of the argument they're marketing, look how the world was transfixed by Messi versus Cristiano over the last 10, 15 years. We're going to build that again, Mbappe versus Haaland.
And also the kids that you talked about at the start of this piece, like you'll be the tip of the spear. Look at the spear behind you is actually the greatest array of young talent. Now, they may not all go on to fulfill their potential, but who knows?
It's a great argument. If you're a striker and you're thinking about supply, he doesn't only feed off. He's not a traditional striker who only feeds from balls in the middle, as good as he is at attacking things aerially. He's a player who can drop deep, often does drop deep, and then likes a sprint on the counter if the ball is fed to him. And when you look at the service that's available to him, I think that's a good idea. What you've said will be part of the package. If you go to Real Madrid or City, you're probably going to be getting similar service, but it does put Barcelona on a parity of what they can argue to the Norwegian and say, look what it could be like for you. Think about grazing on this service.
I'm just going to hijack this whole thing for a minute here. The January sales have proven to be so far a bargain or not, we'll see, for Steven Gerrard. 30% is what they're paying on the premium price for Philippe Coutinho. Is he worth it? Is he 30% of the footballer? Is he 50%? Could he get back to 80%? What's your take on this?
My take, Jerry, is that there's not a massive amount changed in Philippe Coutinho apart from his confidence, which took an awful battering from very early on, and therefore 4 years in, it was time for him, long overdue time for him to move again, although he spent a productive year in Bavaria. The other thing that's maybe changed is that he's not used to being a central figure relied upon, which he wasn't the only one at Liverpool, but he definitely was somebody that the team looked to and put pressure on to produce the goods, whether it was a killer pass or whether it was a shot from distance. He was normally the end part of the product, or that was the most important part of Coutinho's game. These things haven't changed, but he's out of match practice. His confidence was shredded. He found, we all talk about expanding our horizons, taking risks with our creative powers, with our careers. When you do that and you bump your head on the ceiling and find, oh, there's my ceiling, it's not a pleasant feeling. And that's what Coutinho has been suffering at Football Club Barcelona. And it undercut him, undermined him, and therefore some of the decisions he made on the pitch showed that he was fragile in confidence. At Villa, he'll be relied upon. He'll be asked to do special things as long as he's fit. I think he'll be in the team. He has a very, very good relationship. Not just people talk about Steve Gerrard, but when Coutinho joined Barcelona, Gary McAllister was one of the people I phoned and asked. In fact, Gary previously phoned me to tell me he'd been asked me to look at a player, and when Coutinho was somebody who was just breaking through and becoming important at Anfield, Gary was raving about his personality, about his abilities, and saying that he thought way back when that this was a Barcelona player. So he's in an environment at Villa whereby I think that a person like Coutinho definitely does need to feel liked and needs to feel important. It's not the case with all sportsmen and women. It is with him. That will happen. Then an absolute guarantee that he produces, Chair, I think that's too big to ask. He is 4 years older. It has been a pretty debilitating time for his confidence. I use the word again because that's just a fact. So I think it's a good bet. I think there's a very decent chance that once he has 4 or 5 games, serious games under his belt, you begin to see a player that adds flair, that opens things up for Villa and scores from distance coming in off the left-hand side. So I think at the price, and given where Villa are at in terms of squad and quality, it's definitely innovated and excited the fan base. I don't think there's any question about that. So overall, right now, pound for pound, it's the right move. And by the end of the season, I think that on balance, you'll be saying to me, yeah, that's worked okay.
Last question for me is about Sevilla, and there's constantly links from their best players with the Premier League in this window. They're currently second in La Liga. They're playing really well. They've got a manager who's restoring his reputation. Can they hang on to players till the end of the season and see where it takes them, or are the prices being bandied about so much that you expect that there will be significant activity there?
Yes and no. Yes, they can hold on to their best players to the end of the season because it's not obligatory that they sell. No, the prices aren't enough right now. I don't know how many other rumours you've seen over there, but I know that Newcastle genuinely do want Diego Carlos. It's the wrong club for him to go to. I don't believe that only money will motivate him to leave, and they're far short. I mean, the buyout clause is above 80 million. Now, at the moment, clubs, because things are so tight, clubs are tending not to insist on the absolute maximum buyout. But if Newcastle were desperate enough to go up to, 3/4 of the buyout clause and show Sevilla a profit of about 40 million, then they are a club. They're not what we've termed a selling club, because I think that's a pejorative, derogatory term. But they are a club that does business, and Monchi's scouting system is so good, they tend to have a queue of ideas coming up behind the players that you think are established and unsellable. Now seems a bizarre time to sell. There are 2 factors, one of which you've named. Yeah, if they win their game in hand, they're only going to be 2 points off Real Madrid, and they haven't won the title since, I think, 1946. So that's a huge incentive. In fact, this term they need to buy. They need to add goals to their squad rather than sell a key footballer. And secondly, knocked out of the Champions League probably is one of the things that gave Newcastle a sniff of blood, because you lose so much money by not being in the elite competition. Going back to the Europa League, you might think that they go like this. And once you said that they began planning to win the Europa League the night that they got knocked out of the Champions League. And where's the final? It's in Sevilla's own stadium. So the idea of having a shot at the league between now and May and running, in theory, to the Europa League final to play in front of your own fans in your own stadium, now's not the time to sell a big asset. So unless the offering price goes up dramatically, then I think they keep their best footballers.
Graham, just before we let you go, within the 4 clubs who have gone to Saudi Arabia, has there been dissenting voices within the football clubs? Has there been anybody of note who has said this is not something that we're overly happy with, or has everybody got in line and taken the money and shut up essentially?
Well, yeah, everybody except for Raul Garcia, a former Atletico player, current Athletic Club player. He plays off the strike force, wily, tough, dangerous attacking midfielder, second striker, and he launched into one. And listen, I understand that when money talks, football listens really hard. And in a crisis, the fact that they've chosen to play outside their own country is something that traditionalists will regret. And Clubs will say, look at the revenue, look at the extra money we've taken in. This keeps people in employment. I think it's a debate which is a tough one, but it's, if you look at the NFL playing in London, if you look at Italy have played the Super Cup all over the world, I think the Super Cup being played abroad is arguable. It's interesting. There's a huge atmosphere. The stadium could have held many more people, but it would have been a complete sellout apart from COVID distancing rules. Still above 30,000 instead of above 55,000, but it would have been full last night. The noise was huge. It was a good atmosphere. Raul Garcia's version of it was, it's wrong. It's wrong to take these games away from our fans. They should be played in our country. I think he will have a lot of people applauding his words. Fans, for example, last year, because of the pandemic, they played the Super Cup in this format in Seville, not in Saudi Arabia, and it was absolutely fantastic. It was exceptional. Raul Garcia is a lone voice. I'm going to add mine again. I think that playing this game in front of a regime which stands accused and I think, convicted, although not in court, of murdering a dissenter, Jamal Khashoggi in the Turkish embassy, it's wrong to be there, in my opinion. Raul Garcia's argument wasn't that. It was like, play these games in front of the fans, listen to the fans. This is a domestic opportunity for a club like Athletic to taste glory in its own country. It's a solid argument. That concept will be debated loudly, and nothing will change so long as there's so much money flooding into the coffers of the Spanish FA and then out to the clubs again.
Yeah, no doubt. Good stuff, Graham. Great to have you with us this morning. Thanks a million for that. Cheers. Always interesting from Graham to get the lowdown on how things are going. Feels like if Xavi can get those players all fit, if they don't flog them, add in. I mean, Ferran Torres is really good. I'm amazed that City let him go. Maybe Pep's doing his old buddies a favour. Maybe that's what's happening. He's like, yeah, okay, you can have this really, really statistically brilliant striker for not that much money, and it's a profit for us. So he's young, he's not getting in the team at the moment. I don't know. It like you can see how it goes from absolute despair for Barcelona fans at the end of last season when Messi is staying but shunted out because they can't afford him, and you get rid of Koeman, you get Xavi back, and suddenly all the young players are fit again. It's like, we're back.
Yeah, like even from a neutral standpoint, they must be one of the most watchable teams in Europe right now, or the most exciting to watch.
Because the kids didn't all start last night. They they came in as the game went on. So it's not like you're just immediately saying, right, we're going to have these Cuatros Fantásticos or whatever.
Yeah. It might have to happen soon though.
But you will have, before the end of the season, they're all going to start a game together.
Absolutely, especially if we're talking about the likes of De Jong and Dembele potentially dropping out of that starting 11 from yesterday, for example. So it has turned quite quickly, and all of a sudden financially things have turned quite quickly as well.
And those players are really cheap.
Well, that's the thing, yeah.
Comparatively, so you can get rid of all of your high earners and you can pay those like really good money and fight off the interest from the various Premier League clubs who are already sniffing around them. So, I don't know, it'd be great if they could just all play for a season or two together and see how far you can take the team. But maybe if you add in Haaland to that, then they become a superpower again. Right, if you want to get in touch with us, 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. OTB AM is brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. Can we please get a conversation going about how Fitzgibbon and Sigerson is not televised? Having watched the college national championship game in American football on Monday and the spectacle that is, it seems ridiculous we don't sell our second best competition. It's like 10 mini all-star teams playing one another and only watched by a handful. Maddie, just like Eoin, going to see Kerry in January instead.
I think we've had this conversation on the show before, that the college Gaelic games are one of the most underappreciated and underutilised tools that the GAA have.
They're begrudged by inter-county managers, as we see.
Yeah.
They're like, yeah, you can play for your college, but you're volunteering to play for us.
Yeah. Begrudged by the players, of course, is what we're being told.
Yeah, but it turns out the players love it.
Players, of course, they love it. Of course, want to play at the very highest level. They can't really do this at too many points in their career. It's a fantastic opportunity for a lot of these lads to play together. And when you go back through some of even the recent history of this competition, some of the teams and some of the players that play together is absolutely crazy.
Well, you listen to the football pod with Paddy and Andy, and like
Sigerson gets mentioned every week.
Yeah, like Andy Moran literally played with every footballer in the country.
Yeah,
because he went to every college in the country, but had great times.
Yeah, no, it can be so much better than it is, and the calendar just deems it as the problem child, but in actual fact it is the ridiculous length of pre-season Gaelic games and all the rest of it that is the real problem. Or maybe just leave them alone and let them do their thing. And, you know, coming back in early to mid-February is just fine for your county team.
Temple Toohey is 2 miles away from Lockmore.
Okay.
Says Noel Cahill.
That's good to know. So I'll get a Lockmore next time.
Yeah. Did you see Castleiney?
I didn't see Castleiney. That's the first thing that came to mind when you said Lockmore. I didn't see Lockmore either, obviously. So they were obviously together in cahoots.
All these club teams that like reach the latter stages and have like superstars playing for them. You're like, is the town double barreled? Did they get married?
Yeah.
Is that its maiden name?
Is it even a real place?
What's the story? Exactly. Yeah. I mean, some of the clubs, like the intermediate and junior clubs that you would have played football in or hurling in, you're like, there's no town here. There's just a football pitch. Where does everybody live? And then a minibus arrives, or like a tiny car arrives, and 15 people barred out of it, and you're suddenly playing. They're poking the head off you, and you're like, what? This isn't. What if this isn't real? What if we're imagining this?
They all get back into the clown car after and drive to a home that we don't know exists.
Have we been microdosing here? Is that what's happening in the 80s?
That's what's after happening.
A little bit of asbestos floating in the air. Right, 8:41. John Duggan, good morning to you.
Jaron Owen, how are you doing?
Good.
Where do you want to begin? Well,
I think we should talk about Spurs.
Okay.
So Spurs lost the first leg 2-0, and I see, I was 20 years ago when somebody who worked in the sports media in the UK told me all the football writers are basically Spurs fans. So
are they?
Well, that was what I was told. When you read the stuff, you have to read it through the prism of the self-loathing that the football writers have for their team. It seems like whatever
Do you have
happened.
Self-loathing as a Villa fan for Villa?
Not at the moment.
Have you had it?
Oh yeah. After John Gregory. And then, so after John Gregory, and then Martin O'Neill came in, it was okay for a while. But then after that, it was like, oh my God, we had David O'Leary, like, we had Steve Bruce, we had a few others who were, you know, more respectable, like, better, they were trying. Like the Alex McLeish era, I like Alex McLeish. I actually have a lot of time for him, but the football was grim. That was all. Like, why do I even like football anymore?
Did you have self-loathing for Arsenal, Owen?
I still do. I mean, self-loathing is part and parcel of being an Arsenal fan. It's not self-loathing. Sorry, it's numbness. Is the main feeling.
But you would have grown up, say, in 2004. You would have been like 10 or 11 or something.
2004 is not today, unfortunately. I used to love.
But you would have had you would have had a taste of it. You would have a taste of a league title. You would have a taste of a Champions League final.
Yeah, that was the stuff that sucked him in.
Yeah.
No. It's not the stuff that sucked me in. I was absolutely I was well in by the time. I don't ever remember not being an Arsenal fan. There was no point that I got sucked in. It was just I was given an Arsenal pyjamas when I was a baby, and then when I was 4, and then I was.
And you still wear it?
Yeah, I still wear it. I get given it every year, new Arsenal pyjamas. And
I never had the bedspread actually, lads. I'd never had the Spurs bedspread. I'd loved some other things like sweatbands and stuff. Remember sweatbands?
Oh yeah, they were a very big thing in football.
And
Steve Foster,
little Spurs cap, like one of those kind of capines you'd wear in rural Ireland.
I guess what I'm saying is I'm surprised that there's such a massive reaction to a game that was essentially dead from the first leg. They were 2-0 down. There was no way they were coming back in a second leg against Chelsea. And there's this huge kind of, it's on a full-blown crisis now.
It's the sinkhole of despair, I think, that people find themselves in when they're looking at it. And you could see that in Antonio Conte's reaction last night. He's almost thinking to himself, and he's projecting, what have I done here by taking this gig? And
the music is not great, is it?
No.
He doesnn seem aligned with Paratici. He doesn't seem aligned with Daniel Levy. The stuff that he's saying is like, I'm not responsible for these contracts.
Yeah, which was touching the Mauricio Pochettino's there, and he should be aligned with Paratici because they worked together initially. Apparently, Daniel Levy's gone to the Bahamas to meet the king, Joe Lewis, who actually owns the club, and see whether we can get some cash here. But yeah, like, Conte's probably thinking to myself, like, I'm a guy who, apart from his first gig, has generally brought players into clubs and then improved them and won leagues. Funny enough, Antonio Rudiger being one of them. But like the scale of the task after having 3 managers, Pochettino and Mourinho and Nuno and all different types of players, and like players like Ndombele, who has just got a stinking attitude, the most expensive player in the club, you'd have to question the recruitment there. In that, the recruitment, I think, at Spurs has dipped since a guy called Paul Mitchell left the club a few years ago. And where do you begin? Harry Kane ain't happy. He wants to leave. They should have sold him in the summer. Obviously, the stadiums cost a lot of money. And to me at the moment, lads, Spurs is a facility. It's a beautiful stadium. It's a place that holds Premier League games, and also NFL games and other sports.
Great cheese.
And Beavertown beer. But not a football product. And to be fair to Arsenal, I feel Arsenal have got their act together under Arteta.
Feels like it.
He made an example of Aubameyang, and you can see that Arsenal have a clear structure with their defence, with White and Gabriel, the two holders, the three attacking players like Saka, Smith Rowe, all these types of players, and then their striker, and they're probably going to get another striker in if they talk about it. Is it Vlahovic? Yeah, from Fiorentina. So you can see clearly what Arsenal are trying to do. Conte hasn't even begun at Spurs yet, and that's the worry.
What's going to be his moment at Spurs? That was the 3-0 defeat to Arsenal at Chelsea, because things were going grand, and then they got hammered by Arsenal at the Emirates, and then all of a sudden he changed his formation.
Victor Moses, yeah.
But I'm just looking at it here. Like, I thought it was much later into the season. It was 24th September 2016. That was only the sixth game of Conte's Premier League reign at Chelsea, so it was pretty soon. In fairness, it's not like that there was this
they
whole
had a great team though.
But Chelsea fell off a cliff under Jose, but that was because of Jose.
Yeah,
and they still had the raw materials there.
They just won the league.
Yeah, to come back and win that league. I think with Tottenham, like the players wise, you'll have to worry that he just needs to get 4 to 5 signings in. That's going to take a long time, and he's not a rebuilder generally, Antonio Conte. So I'm a little bit concerned about what's going to happen in the future.
There you go, live TV, folks. I'm plugging in the laptop because it's about to go. Okay, look, let's talk about the other thing that's happened over the last 24 hours. Golf got out and was like, yeah, we've got Drive to Survive. We don't know what it's called, but we've got all our best players apart from Rory, and there's no Tiger Woods mentioned. And you said Brooks is there, but Bryson isn't.
Yeah.
Well, there's a few interesting things about this. Look, I think I disappeared from Formula 1 watching for about 10 years, and then I watched Drive to Survive, and what I was really interested about it generated an emotional connection with the strugglers in Formula 1. And that was the interesting story. It wasn't about Hamilton or Verstappen necessarily, and obviously it will be next year, but it was about like people like Roman Grosjean that you had a connection with, and then he had that horrific crash in Bahrain, and then you're thinking, oh my God, when that comes out, that episode, like you're going to be so emotionally invested in it. Golf as well, when John Feinstein wrote A Good Walk Spoiled, one of the most iconic books, it was all about the guys on the edge of making it. When I'm going through the names here, lads, I'm not really seeing that. They're all comfortable, established pros. So you're going to be looking for entertainment. Like, golf already is extremely entertaining in the fact that the play itself is very entertaining on a final round of a Sunday night because it's so topsy-turvy, and it's all about mental brittleness for some players. That'll be the interesting part of this. The access is interesting because the Masters cooperating is very interesting. But it's good to see like players like Harry Higgs, who's got great crack. He'll be involved. Like the likes of Spieth is a very interesting character. But almost on Sergio Garcia, how will he be portraying himself? I'm not surprised like the Ricky Fowler or Bubba Watson are involved, but like will they get because golfers generally are quite, I would say, guarded in interviews, so it'll be interesting to see if they're going to, give it. Yeah,
there'll be a booth in the players' canteen that they're hoping for a bit of gold, and they'll follow some people around, and maybe so they one of the wise decisions they made was they're following the top amateur, and as he plays in the first major, so maybe he is your struggler who struggles to make the cut, that gives you a little bit of that drama. But then the other thing that's happened in the last 12 hours is that the tennis have done the same thing, so this is like let's go.
So Nothing to Declare is actually going to be on Netflix with Novak Djokovic.
That was the name of it, I remember.
Just on the golf, golf has failed at entertainment. The Hollywood entertainment of golf is the actual final round. It's the Masters. It's the drama of it.
Not the Shell World of Golf. Those
the worldwide was the great. Yeah, the Shell's Worldwide Tour of Golf or something like that.
With the one-on-ones where they would have like
Arnold and Jack kind of thing. Yeah. I think the Bryson Brooks thing was an absolute cringe fest. It was just completely contrived for me. It was BS, right? Like when I've seen Phil Mickelson stuff on Instagram, I haven't found it very entertaining. I found it a bit cringe as well. So I'm hoping that golfers can be a little bit square. I'm hoping that there's a bit more raw edge to it when we look at this in a year's time.
The tennis players are going to be spoiled brats.
Yeah, but are golfers not privately like that as well? I definitely kind of would be sceptical as well, John. But a lot of what you're saying there kind of definitely rings true of Formula 1 about 4 years ago, that the drivers seemed like boring individuals. They still give relatively boring interviews in their post-race interviews, like during the season, that you still had a good bit of drama maybe in the actual season. You could make the point that maybe as a spectacle, the sport didn't necessarily need any added drama, but it got added drama. Like this season, for example, was an unbelievable season, but we're also excited for more because we're going to get an insight to one of the most dramatic seasons ever in Formula 1. I would be sceptical, but I still think that what they've done, what they did with Formula 1 was so exceptional that they can surely replicate it to a certain extent.
What I was reminded by the Formula 1 documentary was how bloody dangerous the thing is.
Yeah,
and that really hooked me into it. Golf ain't dangerous.
Yeah.
And that's my concern, is that like with Formula 1 and golf, is golf going to be comparable to Formula 1?
They might do a deep dive on the alligator who came on the course in Florida, was it a couple of years ago, and like go through its family background and see, did the alligator have any kids, did it get taken away and put in a zoo or something like that? And then obviously
one of the golfers is now wearing it as a shoe.
Golf is such a singular minded, because I've interviewed golfers after majors and that, and they're extremely polite people, but they live in this bubble. They live in a complete bubble, and that's maybe the way they roll. Whereas that's I'm fascinated with that Rory's not involved in this. Or like Patrick Cantlay, my other fellow I'm looking at this year, in that, well, actually, I've got a singular focus. I'm interested that Xander Schauffele, for example, I thought he was going to have a really good this year. Is he going to be distracted negatively from the fact that the cameras are going to be on him all the time, given it's just a singular focus thing, you know?
Well, I wonder, like maybe this is just me, but I would absolutely watch something that was creatively driven by the golfers. So say, I presume Netflix have a good idea of what's funny and what's entertaining. Golfers do not. But I would watch something that the golfers have control over, because it would be so bad, it would be good. So take GMAC at his pool table.
Shane Hannon.
If every episode is GMAC at his pool table,
you're watching.
That these guys think that this is actually really good stuff, I will watch that 10 times out of 10.
Well, Liam Poulter's involved, so you'll probably get plenty of that. We've got to move on, John. Is there stuff happening in the world today?
Yeah, just very, very briefly. The one thing about the Formula 1 got caught up in the Netflixization of the sport, and it became entertainment. I don't think golf will do that, and that's a good thing for golf. I think the too many rules and that kind of thing. What's going on? I think Djokovic is getting deported, lads. I think it's going to happen probably tomorrow.
Yeah, he's in the draw.
He's in the draw, funnily enough, against a fellow Serb. There's going to be a massive celebration of Serbian-Australian carnival atmosphere from Miomir Kecmanovic if they meet next week. I can't see it happen. Even that, was it Renata Varachova who was deported? Pretty much the same case as Djokovic. And Scott Morrison said that the policy hasn't changed this morning, the Australian PM. So on what grounds could they keep him there? The only grounds, obviously, is that he's going for 10
Pretty
Australian
famous,
Opens.
yeah.
Pretty
He's
famous.
a celebrity.
So it'll be pretty transparent if he stays, but I think he's going.
We'll keep a close eye on that. Anything else going
on? Not really, apart from Owen's trip to Fela 2022, Temple Toohey. So good to see Kerry win last night. Obviously Spurs lost, as we know. Liverpool against Arsenal. All these players in the Africa Cup of Nations that are not involved tonight. And Salah, Jurgen Klopp pretty confident about his contract being renewed. So that's pretty much what's going on this morning.
All right, JD, good stuff. Thanks very much for that. At 8:53 this morning, you can hear more from John, obviously, on Saturday afternoon on Off the Ball on News Talk, and of course across the OTB Sports app as well. A reminder, OTB AM is brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. Give us your view on the Netflixization of sport, or indeed on Kerry and their absolute thumping of tip last night that Eoin was one of the 12 people in. What was the crowd? Give us an estimation of the actual size of the crowd.
Oh, I'm very bad at picking numbers like this. Maybe 500?
A big old crowd.
Yeah, I hope that's close to being correct.
Unreliable eyewitness, Eoin Sheahan. Yeah. Right. Now, I'm delighted to say we're about to be joined by Greater Western Sydney Giants Brid Stack. First, we want to show you the moment captured by the Giants as Brid was told last week that she'd be making her WAFL debut.
Have I forgotten anything?
Maybe one more.
Just add in the other Irish here. I knew you'd chime in. yeah, it's a shit way to get here, isn't it? Like, have to come back twice and go through everything you've been through. Kick ass, all right?
Bridge, good morning to you.
Hi, how are you?
That was pretty emotional. The moment where you get told that you're about to make your debut, what's that like?
Yeah, I suppose it's very, very different to how kind of you get told in GA circles. So there was a lot of probably emotion around it. I suppose I had known the girls now a full year. So there was a lot more, it was a lot more highly charged, definitely. And Alan loves a bit of drama, so yeah.
And the cameras are there as well. Like it's obviously it is totally different from like being taken aside in training. Going, listen, you're starting at the weekend. Don't tell anybody.
Of course. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I know. And I suppose look, that's just the way that they do it. They make sure that any girl that isn't starting obviously knows well in advance of this big announcement as well. So you know everyone's feelings are definitely taken into account, but he had spoken to anyone that hadn't made it, and he hadn't come near me. And the way he announced it, like he put up like 16 names on the screen first, and it was like all these girls. They've already played in Giants jumpers before, and you're getting another day out. And I was like frantically counting. I was like, Jesus, how many are traveling? Like, you know. And then he just started going one by one. They kind of came up on screen. So. Katie Lyons came up and Chloe Dawson came up, and then two of the younger girls that are just in this year, so Ali Marfit, and Ali Dalloway, they got up as well. And next thing he went to the emergencies, so he went straight to the side of the screen, and we're like, and these are the two emergency girls on the day. And my heart was just like pounding out of my chest, because I was frantically counting, going, geez, how many people are traveling? Like, is it 22, 23? And I didn't see my name, so I kind of started to panic a bit. And then Cora chimed in. So she had my back, in fairness to her.
She absolutely did, yeah. The very recognisable Mayo brogue there, making sure that you were getting picked. And so when your name does get picked, obviously, we saw the emotion there. It's not just because you're getting picked for that game. It's because of the journey that you've been on to get here. Notwithstanding even the neck injury, but even just the whole decision in the first place to come out a year ago.
Yeah. Sure, look, it is like, it was, I suppose, a long road to get to that point. And I suppose a lot of girls in that room knew what had to go in, a lot of sacrifices and a lot of hard work had to go in for to get to that point. So yeah, like I suppose coming back had its own challenges. Like I stayed on for an extra 5 weeks once I kind of got the all clear, and that really was, you know, just to kind of, I suppose, enjoy the sport and enjoy my time in Australia, and for it not to be completely tainted with the injury. So we stayed on for an extra 5 weeks, did a small little bit of travel, but most of it was actually just staying in Sydney. And Alan, you know, just completely invested himself in me in that 5 weeks. And I'd say he took me 3 or 4 times a week for one-on-one sessions, just building my confidence back. You know, teaching me how to fall, teaching me how to fly for a ball, teaching me just how to get my head back over the ball again. And, you know, I think those 5 weeks were probably a massive reason that I did come back. He just cares so much. And I said it in an interview already earlier this week, that he does remind me so much of Eamon Ryan. He invests so much in the person so that he can get so much more out of the player. And I think those 5 weeks definitely were a massive reason for me wanting to come back. Obviously, look, I'm a competitive person, and I didn't want it to end like that. I wanted to give it another crack, and thankfully my family were just super supportive, and thankfully Corach was, you know, fully on board with coming back over again. And I suppose thankfully our son Corach Og is at a young enough age, you know, that we weren't disrupting school or anything like that. Granted, he has absolutely no routine, so but we'll deal with that in a couple of years.
That 5 week period of getting your confidence back is really interesting. Can you try and describe the difference mentally at the start of the 5 weeks compared to at the end of those 5 weeks?
Yeah, sure. I suppose, look, it's just like anything, you have to start slowly, and like he was just super, super encouraging. Like Cora stayed on obviously as well with us for that 5 weeks. So myself, Corach and Cora and Alan, we had our own little gang, and we met up 3 or 4 times a week and just absolutely loved it. So we'd start off doing things like that I was very, very comfortable with, which would be like kicking and all that type of stuff. And then as it went on, he progressed me to bumping off like tires and bumping off like tackle bags and things like that. And by the end of it, I was fully in the winter training program that the girls were in. That was brilliant, and to actually do it in big giant stadiums. So they were training in the main giant stadium in Olympic Park towards the end. So that was even lovely in itself to get to experience. That huge stadium was class. So I joined in probably the last 3 or 4 weeks of last 3 or 4 sessions, of their winter program. So that was brilliant. That was all contested stuff. So that gave me a lot of confidence. And I suppose then when I came home, I think it's very, very easy to be like all guns blazing when you're here and you're immersed in a high performance setting, and everything is charged towards the game and getting as good as you can and recovery and everything like that. Whereas when I went home, I suppose immediately I was, first of all, in a massive comfort blanket with my family. Everyone was wanting to look after Cork Oak. I had so much, time to myself if I needed it. We to get back fully into work. Myself and Cork we have our own business, so we had to, get straight back into work. So I think it probably wasn't until I got home that I kind of hit a wall, really, I suppose, in terms of just what had happened, and probably a little bit of a sense of failure probably about the whole thing. But Alan was on to me non-stop, and I think even getting back into GA when I came home was massive. So I went back training with my club, and like that started slowly, and thankfully was able to play all championship games and everything. So while ladies football isn't deemed contact, like full on contact, like obviously it doesn't have to tackle, there is an off amount of contact in it. You have to still get your head over the ball and things like that. So I think that definitely stood me in good stead and kind of gave me confidence then to fully commit to coming back over.
And did you have any hangover from the injury itself when you got back over and were like, okay, I actually have to put myself through the physicality of this sport so that I know that when there's a ball there to be got, I'm going to go for it?
Yeah, 100%. And I had to do a lot of that at home really as well. Did an awful amount of that at home, and just making sure that the neck was fully strong and fully rehabbed. And then had a couple of setbacks. I broke 2 fingers at home as well, over the summer. So just little setbacks that kind of can get into your head. But I think the big thing was that that when I came back over, I had nearly a full pre-season. So I think that was the biggest thing, and that was a real kind of money in the bank thing, that you had a full pre-season done with the girls and that you finished strongly, that you weren't coming out with any injury, that you were going hell for leather in the training sessions, and that you were coming out stronger and ready for the next one. And the coaches were absolutely outstanding. They're really specialised. We have a backs coach, Darren Ratton, and he took me for so many one-on-one sessions at the start, and all of them confidence building, but my neck was in fair bits for the start, because they went fairly hard at me. But I suppose when I got my debut, then I suppose the first thing was I just make sure that I get my head over the first ball, and then you don't think about it anymore. So I made plenty of mistakes on my debut and things like that, but I suppose the big thing was that I have a match under my belt and that I did put my head over the ball. And even in the review, on the Tuesday, Alan made a point of showing, he was like, this was the exact position that you were in when you broke your neck this time last year, and look what you're doing the exact thing straight away, you're getting your head back over the ball. So it's real confidence building, and look, hopefully I can improve from now on, and just get used to structures and things like that is the big thing. Yeah.
It's interesting, we mentioned Cora Staunton at the top there, and you mentioned her yourself, and she was there helping you out during those tough times. Just how important has having her around the club and yourself been? How important has that been over the course of the last year or so?
Yeah, sure, she's just a remarkable friend, and I think even the fact she went through a fairly devastating injury herself, and Cork, my husband, went through a fair setback as well, with his knee. They've both experienced fairly lengthy injuries, so they knew kind of the importance of getting in my head early and just taking small steps and setting small goals and not thinking too far down the line So I think having her in my corner and Cork obviously in my corner, I think, you know, they definitely helped my mindset big time. And, you know, they're still chirping away in my ear the whole time. So I suppose I'm very glad that I'm coming over I'm still probably, you know, rookie status here, but that you have someone who has been around the club now for 6 years, knows the ins and outs, but is still, you know, can understand it from an Irish point of view. So that's very, very important.
How soon after you had the injury did you decide that you wanted to come back and play WAFL? That whatever was going to happen, whatever the setbacks were going to be, that this was something that you still wanted to do?
Yeah, I suppose maybe a bit naively. During the course of last year, I was like, no, I'll get back for the end of the year. And, you know, probably looking back, it was complete naivety. And, you know, there were people coming up to me and giving me hugs saying, oh, look, you know, don't worry. And I just kept brushing them off. I was like, no, I'll be back now for the end of the year. And I suppose in my head, I'd never suffered an injury. I'd never broken a bone. So in my head, I was like, oh, break, 6 weeks would be grand, like, you know. And I think I needed that type of mindset. I know it sounds like silly thinking about it now, but I think I needed you know, to set myself small goals and to see that this was attainable, because otherwise, you know, I would have felt like, what the hell am I doing out here? Like, you know, I may as well just get on a plane and go home. So I definitely needed to keep setting myself goals. And, you know, thankfully I got in for the last, you know, 2 training sessions with the team towards the end of the season. And unfortunately, they didn't make finals, so it didn't carry on from there. But I think I needed that for myself to see, right, I got back in for the last 2 sessions and then obviously stayed on for the 5 weeks and did all the extra work with Alan. But yeah, I think it probably did take until I came home. Probably took a little bit of time for myself because, like I said, you're in a highly charged environment when you're over here and you don't probably think too much outside of it. Whereas I probably went home and did probably think about all the implications of what could have been. Whereas I didn't allow myself to do that when I was over here. So, yeah, I suppose it just, you know, I needed to take that time. And look, thankfully, the season is kind of a half-year split that I had the time to do that and then, you know, came back in a much stronger mindset. So, yes, I'm delighted I came back over.
Now that you're back in it, like, is there a timeline in your head about how long you will do this? Or is it actually like the old cliche, I'm just going to keep going? Why not? Like,
oh, jeez. It is game to game with me at the moment. I suppose the first thing is like the season, it's 10 games long is the main season, but like it's week on week. So that's straight away something that I'm not used to. I'm not used to playing every single week straight for, you know, 10 weeks. Probably haven't done that for a good while, you know, playing the league. Maybe with Cork would have been the last time that I would have done that. So, you know, even like the club championship at home, like we had, you know, good breaks, maybe like, you know, 2 weeks breaks. So this is 10 weeks and you add in contact and weary bodies into that, you know, little knocks here and there. And I suppose it's real survival of the fittest. And I think even round 1 alone, you know, there was some amount of injuries already in round 1. You know, 3 of the top players in the AFLW competition from 3 of the probably top teams, 3 of them are after doing their ACLs already in round 1. There's a girl that got a punctured lung and broken ribs. Like, it's just nuts. And one of our girls, you know, hurt her AC joint. So you really can't think past next week, to be honest. So that's the way I'm focusing at the moment. We do the Oppo review and you look at who you're playing next week. And then, you know, you go into the game and try to make sure you come out of it as best you can. So that's just the way I'm looking at it at the moment. And, you know, hopefully I get through the 10 weeks.
Yeah, well, look, it's an incredible story to get back. How do you feel you played and how are you actually with the ball at the moment and all that kind of stuff? The normal run-of-the-mill stuff that we would have been asking you if you'd been playing anyway.
Yeah. Like, I suppose I actually would have been going well at training. So I would have been very, very happy with how that had been going. Obviously, the first game, I probably was more nervous than I've ever been for any game that I've ever played. Probably was highly charged going into it, given the week that was in it. I had to turn off my phone and just not look at it for 2 days, to be honest, because the amount of well wishes that I was getting was, while it was so lovely, it was a small bit overwhelming. So just had to try to focus on the game as much as possible. And like I said, look, I made mistakes, but as the game went on, thankfully, you know, I grew in confidence. So it's just try to take that into the next week. And I suppose the real thing, you know, was reviewing it on the Tuesday. I found that I was getting so far forward of the ball sometimes. So that's something that I'm definitely going to have to try to improve on. He's trying to bait the Gaelic football out of me. I'm just getting too far forward sometimes of the ball, so just to kind of learn to kind of sit back a little bit and kind of look for kind of the scrappy ball that comes out of stoppage. So I suppose just given the amount of stoppages and the amount of contests, it's very different to Gaelic football in that sense.
Is it an enjoyable game to play?
It is, yeah. Your adrenaline would be pumping for a good bit, in fairness. It is enjoyable. You probably I think until you get probably really kind of content with the structures and everything like that, you probably can show off your finesse. So while my kicking would be very, very good at training, sometimes when there's high pressure on, you don't probably get to execute as well as you would like to. So it's just probably about trying to give yourself that time and get yourself in good positions is probably the biggest thing that I have to learn, and hopefully I learn it quick. And
the last thing for me is the contact, because obviously there's been a lot of talk about maybe changing women's Gaelic football so that you are allowed to shoulder, or that it's a bit more similar in terms of the amount of contact that's allowed. Now that you've played that and you've seen what it's like in game time, does that change your view at all? Does it inform you slightly differently about what you think the future of women's Gaelic football should be?
Oh, I definitely think there needs to be a little bit more leeway in ladies football, definitely. I think girls are strong enough and fast enough and prepared enough. They do it in training all the time, and I do think there is definitely allowance for a lot more contact. Obviously the tackle is a completely different animal, but definitely think there's room for shouldering and I suppose just using your body more. Like girls are putting in endless hours in the gym and making sure teams have every team has an S&C now, and making sure that girls are in tip-top conditions. So why not allow I suppose that the rules allow that a little bit more to show off what the girls are doing so much and putting so much hard work in.
Well, listen, we wish you the very best of luck in your next game, and we hope you get the jumper for that one too. Congratulations on the comeback. It's an incredible story, Brid. Thanks a million.
That's great. Thank you. Bye.
It's Brid Stack there on the line from Sydney this morning. 11 minutes past 9. Here's what's coming up on OTB Sports Radio today. OTB Gold at 1 o'clock, it's Barry Ryan, The Ascent. At 3 o'clock, it's Leaders' Questions. At 4 o'clock, it's our retro panel on the sporting mindset. OTB Gold at 6 is Michael Conlon on his Rio exit. A bit of controversy about the fact that his title fight is not going to be either in Belfast or New York, that it's going to be in England. I think, is it Liverpool? Is that where the fight is? But we'll talk about that a little bit more in the coming weeks. Now, rugby fans don't want to miss our latest instalment of the OTB Sports video series with Leia Healthcare. The series features rugby stars Bevan Parsons, Lindsay Peat and Dorothy Wall, and explores how they stay a beat ahead. Leia Healthcare, official health and wellbeing partner to Leinster, Munster and Connacht Rugby. Episode 3 is out now on OTB Sports social channels. Getting a lot of love from Kelly Harrington on Twitter yesterday. Here's a little taste of their chat in the ad break. Stay tuned.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
I'm even happier seeing Karen's face on screen, so it's just beautiful.
Keep up to date with the latest WSL action and the biggest interviews.
I just love moving teams, and then you have to do an initiation. Just love that moment in the sort of limelight.
Subscribe to the Koi Gig podcast stream on the OTB Sports app now.
Rugby is a great outlet, and I think you have seen firsthand though I'm mature by age, probably very immature in the boisterous behaviour within camp, because I think that's what I've learned and thrived with sport is the fun element and allowing people to be at ease in my company and trust me and build that connection. So definitely love the permission to just be that bit of a fool and have the crack, and
it's a great release. It's an endorphin buzz, and
absolutely
you wouldn't get it from many other things. I love training. I suppose we're conditioned to be like that. We're all very competitive. I suppose that's what we do. It is part of us, and I really enjoy. Obviously, there's bad days and good days, but training with people you enjoy training with and getting a system right, there's such satisfaction in that sort of coming together on the pitch, I find anyway.
With prices from only €289 for fully comprehensive car insurance, everyone's making the jump to getsetgo.ie. New business policies only. Prices subject to minimum premiums. T's and C's apply. MCL Insurance Services Limited Trading is getsetgo.ie is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
Right, 14 minutes past 9 this morning. Time for us to turn our attention to the Six Nations depth chart. We're moving on to the second row, and I'm delighted to say Malcolm O'Kelly is with us. Malcolm, good morning to you. How are you?
Ger, how are you?
Good. This is an interesting time of year for players who believe they're in with a shout for selection. Did you enjoy the January before you knew you were getting picked, or were you always fairly confident that you were getting picked for that period of time when you were winning your 80-odd caps?
I was always sure I was going to be selected. Always sure. It's always a very exciting time, and it's actually a nerve-wracking time. I can remember myself, I got injured the week before we were due to play Wales in Wembley, and I dislocated my shoulder the week before, and I can remember injuring my knee the week before we were due to play France in Croke Park and following England. So it is a nerve-wracking time because you're a little bit fearful that you can't look too far ahead because you might get injured. And then the injuries you can miss a small injury, you can miss the whole season or a very important part of that season. So there's that as well. I always felt if I was fit, I was going to get picked, so.
Who was the first coach that gave you that security? Was it?
That was just born within me. No, there was never that. You were never sure of your position. You were never ever sure, and certainly I wasn't. I was never sure of that. I never had that security because there was always great competition within the squad, and everybody would literally push each other out of the way or stamp in each other to get that opportunity to get the call. So as close as we were, we would do whatever it takes to get on the pitch ahead of the other. So we were a very competitive squad. So.
What was the depth chart when you were getting into the team? Who was just ahead of you that you pushed out of the way and stamped on to get in?
Well, I always found that it was a lot of the times, things just happened. Maybe it was for me or... but I remember Jeremy Davidson had just come off the Lions, and he ended up getting an injury that opened the way for me. And had he not been injured, my 92 caps maybe in half that. So you never can really tell how things will go and fare in that regard, and you just have to look after yourself and make sure you're there for when you get the call up.
Who was your first partner?
Paddy Johns.
Right. He was a mainstay in the team because he was the captain. So
yeah, he was the enforcer. Yeah. He was a tough nut and got tougher as time went on. There wouldn't be a ruck that he wouldn't lead with a hard part of his body, be it head, knee, elbow. So I don't think he'd have been one maybe for the modern game. But then again, I'm sure he could have adapted.
So you played a load with him. Who else would have been your main partners? You finished up with Paul O'Connell, really, is it?
Paddy, yeah. So started with Paddy. I would have had Paddy. Would have then a bit with Jeremy Davidson. That is Mick Galway, of course, came in and out like a yo-yo. And then there was Gary Longwell had a spell. Paul O'Connell, then Donica, Mick O'Driscoll.
Right.
There was a fair collection of Irish legends there.
Right, okay. Well, let's talk about... we'll talk about Paul O'Connell and his impact in a little while, but let's get to your current depth chart. This is going to be very interesting, I think, Malcolm. A lot of people will be like, ooh, this is mildly controversial. Your number one is Ian Henderson. I'm going to go 1 to 4, right?
Yeah.
Number 1 is Ian Henderson. Number 2 is Tadhg Beirne. Number 3 is James Ryan, and there's brackets around that, just has to prove his fitness. And number 4 is Ryan Baird. So why is James Ryan not number 1?
Because of his injury profile. I just don't think I'm really picking this for this Wales match. That's what I'm seeing it. 2 boys have been playing. James hasn't played since he came off in the last international. So I think possibly had Leinster not had that COVID breakdown, that it would be different. Like James Ryan is a phenomenal talent, and I do think that he will play a significant role. But I'm just thinking Ireland-Wales. I think the first match, Tyke Byrne for me has been exceptional. He just seems to be getting better. He's playing a lot more in that second row position now, and his contribution just seems, whether you play him 6 or 4, seems equal. So for me, I think he is probably thereabouts. And Ian Henderson, he's come on a huge amount as well, and both of them with that Lions experience, would be a decent partnership. Now, look, James Ryan gets picked number 1 because he finished last. He still holds that jersey. I wouldn't be surprised at all. But he hasn't played in a while, and to come back in, like will he get 1-2 games maybe with Leinster, if he's available, then maybe that'll be enough for him to get back up there. He was playing phenomenal rugby, so I know it might sound controversial, but I'm de-controversialing it now because I do that I respect his talent hugely, and I wouldn't be surprised if he was fully fit. I would have him number 1 because I do think he's phenomenal talent.
Had you felt, Malcolm, that he got back on side or had got his form really back on track at the end of last year after maybe a few struggles earlier in the year? And if not, maybe is there something that you'd like to see more from James Ryan when he does get back and fully fit?
I think with James came onto the scene, he brought something that Ireland really needed, like that little. He was similarly to what Paul O'Connell could bring. He could find a yard or two, those kind of real hard yards, and interesting lines coming back in against the grain, real tough lines. And then I think his next season, I think people were aware of that and awake for that, and those lines became less and less, and he really started struggling to find those meters in his carries. And I think this year now, since he's come back, he's looked like he's looking to manage the line out. He is developing his game, his ball carrying, and offering other things maybe a little bit wider. And he's developed his game as a more rounded game now, which I think is where he needs to go with it. And he brings that physicality that is in defence and in the hits. Now he's, do we still have that big question mark around him in terms of his health and his fitness? So that's there still, I'm afraid.
Yeah, and part of that is actually how much rugby he played at a very early stage of his career. And I understand why. We all wanted him to play. We wanted him to be made captain. We wanted him to play every game, to get every second. But in retrospect, maybe if we all had our time again, you would take him out of the firing line and maybe play him a little bit less often. The trouble was that there wasn't always a natural replacement, or there would have been a clamour, and all sports teams are prisoners of the now because they need to win today. I wonder, is there a lesson to be learned with Ryan Baird, who we all want to see? Like, we're desperate to see Ryan Baird get the minutes, but actually maybe the right thing for Ryan Baird's middle and late career is for him not to be flogged and playing every minute now.
Yeah, Ryan Baird is an interesting one for me. I think he's come on a lot. I really think that, again, the Leinster break has not helped him in this time. I think what he can offer at 6 as well is again just the so much choice for Leinster. He's just not seeing that kind of time at 6 either. So it depends. Again, Andy Farrell might say, we can bring this dude on for 20 minutes at the end of the match. It could be the difference for us. So his impact could be the difference, because he's such a phenomenal athlete, and we've all seen it.
Well, let me position this right. Let's say we see James Ryan prove his fitness before the Wales game. Pick your 2 second rows and pick who's on the bench for me.
That is the challenge, isn't it? And I'm glad I'm not the selector. But well, I think you're picking. For me, I think you're picking. You're picking James Ryan, and you're picking. I would say Tyke Byrne, and then you've got between the two lads, you've got potentially two good guys to come on. And that's a big call. I think I'd stick with Henderson, you know. I think just in terms of his ability to cover both lads, cover the line out, everything like that. And I know it's probably less impact. Well, he is a massive impact to come on, Henderson, so he offers that as well. So I'm kind of going back on myself now, and that's just It is a tight call at that level, and it's just the nature of. But it's always been like that. At the end of the day, chances are James Ryan isn't going to be fit enough. That's my take.
And you give him the extra week because you're like, well, actually, I don't lose anything by making sure his fitness is at as close as it can be.
You have two very strong guys. One guy running the show in Ulster, Tyke. Oh my God, against Ulster, how good was that guy? He was just so good.
See, do you? Yeah. There's no one's saying drop Caelan Doris. No one's saying drop Jack Conan, but everybody wants to get Tyke Byrne in the team.
Yeah.
I don't know how you do it.
Yeah, exactly. You got to get him, and might be at the expense of James Ryan. Isn't that incredible?
See, it looks like they've earmarked Ryan for the captaincy because they've already kind of gone that direction.
Yeah.
So you can't.
Perhaps I've overlooked. Yeah.
You can't. Maybe you can drop him. I don't know, but it feels like it's the type of thing that doesn't happen in rugby. You anoint the captain, and then the captain gets a bit of a free pass on their form or whatever. But I don't know. It's tricky, isn't it?
It is tricky. Yeah, and I just think that whole thing, and I don't want to be bringing it up because I know as a player, like the last thing you want to be hearing is these lads telling him, he's injured, and it's very, very frustrating because they know, I don't know, he knows himself, but that whole thing around concussion and stuff, it needs to be treated with respect, so I'm sure he's fine.
Notwithstanding that, right? Like if James Ryan was to take off a couple of months now, it's not the worst time in the world to take off a couple of months to make sure that everything is great. And then you do get the opportunity to give Ryan Baird really meaningful game time in massive games over the course of the Six Nations. Tyke Byrne gets to show that he's now fully a second row. We need to stop thinking about him as a potential sixth, and that's his role, and it's going to be his role for the next 3 or 4 seasons. And Ian Henderson's own injury profile, despite the fact he already has 70 odd caps as well, it's frequent where Henderson will put together a burst of form and then get injured and be out for a while, and then put together a burst of form too.
It does seem to be the nature of rugby players these days that it's hard to stay on the pitch for any real length of time. The old rowers were always kind of fairly had an ability to kind of get through match after match after match, but I don't think it's a good, like, if you look maybe even at Sexton's profile where he's kind of literally trying to get himself fit for every international kind of break and missing the kind of provincial break, the provincial pieces. I don't think it's a good idea to be kind of using the international blocks as your playtime and then kind of like recovering through the provincial period. You do need to get a number of games under your belt, to just get your eye in, and to come back for those high-level international matches as your first and second match.
Well, that's really interesting, right? Because obviously Leinster haven't played for a month because of COVID. Nothing to do with them, but in the papers during the week, they were saying, we've got a lot of players here. They all need a lot of game time. We had 3 packs at training. There was 24 forwards. And they're trying to keep them all satisfied and ready to go. And I've no doubt the next time they play, there'll be a bit of sputtering and the diesel will be a little bit dirty in the tank. So I don't expect them to be amazing.
You're with that group of guys. You're back to September, you know, and it takes at least a good three matches to find your feet, you know, to see where you're. Now the top guys can maybe get up, but like you cannot expect a guy who's had 6-8 weeks off to come back and be at the level he was at 3 months earlier.
Given that, right, does that feed into the selection conversation when Farrell is sitting down with Paul O'Connell and the rest of the group saying these guys haven't played any rugby, we know what they're they beat the All Blacks, we know what they're capable of, but actually what we're going to do in this Six Nations is give the Ulster lads, give the Connacht lads, give the Munster lads who are playing rugby the opportunity to come in and go, well, our depth is really strong now.
I think you'll definitely see that. I think you'll definitely see that, Ger. I think we'll see more Munster, Connacht and Ulster lads in this starting, because normally we'd see them in the squad but we wouldn't see them start, but we'll see them start. Certainly a better you know, I'd say probably half the team, you know, because the Leinster, they just won't have had the game time. They won't be match fit. It'll be a bad look, I think. It'd be a bad look to just throw all the Leinster guys on, you know. And I think they'll show faith in the squad that they have and go with the guys that are performing week in, week out.
Unless, of course, Leinster absolutely hockey Montpellier this weekend and they're like...
The game goes ahead.
They would forget about
well, there's still a couple of weeks for them to play matches. It's fair. It's a fair point that Eoin's making. There's still room for Leinster to play, or those players who are Ireland players playing for Leinster, there's still an opportunity for them to get in the shop window. But if for example, you were picking the team this week for Wales next week, you'd have to say, like, it would be no harm for some of those players not to be rested, but to be like, look, as soon as you get back playing, you're going to be back playing. You're just not match fit at the moment.
I suppose you'd need to have games for those guys. Like, there's no point them sitting on the sideline with another week's break. You know, it's not a break they need; it's a match they need. So it's tricky as well, because you do need to get those guys on the pitch.
We're nearly out of time. We need to ask about Paul O'Connell. Sorry, can you see his impact as a second row? Do you immediately go, I can see the difference between having O'Connell involved and not involved over the last 18 months?
Yeah, definitely. I think their line-out detail has improved. I think the fact that James Ryan is now being, I would say, one-on-one coached by Paul in terms of how to handle the line-out. It's something that he hadn't really engaged in, and now I see he is engaging in. I think that's phenomenal for him and for all the second rows to have someone like him there. I think even their maul detail has really come up and looks super strong. I would say having someone like Paul, he's such a great character and enthusiastic character. To have him around, it just would be a real spark within the camp, and really exciting for any of the young players and rowers and back rowers alike to be involved with him. You know, so I think it's just real positive.
Like, in terms of the fingerprints that we initially saw last year, has there been a progression throughout, I guess, November, Matt, or is it just more work, more quality in terms of just getting more game time or more face time with the players?
Yeah, definitely. You can see his fingerprints all over it. Just as I said, the detail at set piece in line out. Like, I think especially line out defence. Like, Paul would have been a real student of line-out defence, and they were so competitive in the November series, getting up in the air, pods up in the air, and not just O'Mahony. Like I said, like O'Mahony would be great at that, but there's all the other jumpers were involved now, able to read what was happening, getting up in the air. And that's Paul O'Connell's that's his fingerprints, you know. Like, the detail he'd bring to that would be beyond any non-specific kind of rower, you know. So then I'm sure his detail around ruck, around and his general insight would have had an effect on the squad and the performance. I wouldn't be able to pinpoint anything exactly, but you can expect that his influence will be everywhere.
Yeah, all right.
Because he's that type of character. He's just a leader. He's very strong and he's a great way with people, but he doesn't rub people up the wrong way. Like he'll bring a glue to the squad rather than kind of alienating himself or trying to take over or anything like that. Like he'll just bring a glue and a great environment to the whole thing.
Yeah, for sure. Malcolm, great stuff. Your Twitter feed might be aflame that you haven't put James Ryan at number 1, although you kind of backtracked a little bit, but
yeah,
you've got Ian Henderson number 1. There's nothing we can do. I mean, I'd like to say that your day won't be ruined by Leinster fans going, what are you talking about?
I'm sorry, Leinster fans. I let you know I'm Leinster all the way.
Malcolm, good stuff. Thanks a million. Cheers. Great to have you with us.
Cheers. Bye.
Right. It is 9:35 this morning. A reminder, OTB AM brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with our new and improved razors. We've had a really busy show for you. Massive amounts of comments coming in on our YouTube channel. Apologies we didn't get them. We will definitely get them in more detail on tomorrow's show, when that will be your responsibility, Eoin. So I'm setting you up for a fall already. To bring you to 10 o'clock this morning, here is some Mark Lawrence and goodness talking about Mo Salah.
Very happy to say Mr. Mark Lawrenson is on the line. Good evening.
Hi, Joe.
A few things to chat to you about. I suppose in broad terms it's been maybe a month since we've had a chat on this show, and suddenly, as quick as we blink, our what we thought was going to be our 3-horse race has become Man City 10 points clear of Chelsea, same number of games played, 11 points clear of Liverpool. Liverpool do have a game in hand, but 11 points nonetheless, and it kind of feels like City are on course for 90-something points, and the rest will be trailing in their wake, which is never a great place to be in the January of a title race.
No, and I think probably both Chelsea and Liverpool aren't thinking of doing many deals, if any deals, in the January transfer window as well. So they've probably not got reinforcements coming in or anything. But I think City have just been outstanding. I think privately Klopp knows, and also Tuchel knows that they're not going to catch City. But they're obviously playing for second and third. But even then, I think both the second and third, there'll be a lot of points clear than the fourth place team. And City have just been outstanding, haven't they? And he's going to do it again, Pep. The only thing, maybe, and it's a big maybe in inverted commas, is Champions League. If they start to go a long way, lose a few players, I'm hoping here, Anna. Basically, I'm not very convincing. Yeah. Now, I think they'll win the league by many, many points. To be honest with you, I think it's a foregone conclusion now.
What's it like as a pro, as a professional, when you're playing league games week in, week out, and really at the back of your mind and everyone's minds, the placings have kind of been decided? Like there's a real going through the motions vibe. Is that difficult?
Joe, to be honest with you, we were always being chased. I mean. So I couldn't really answer it, because we were always in that Liverpool team. We were always in that position where we were being chased. And I tell you what you do, and players always do it now. Is the first thing you do, you come in the dressing room after your match, hopefully that you win it. And how did Liverpool go on? Oh, they won. Oh, crikey! So you're just looking to pick up any advantage, but. It's very, very difficult for the chasing pack if the team at the top not only is a very, very good team, but consistently just wins games and wins games not playing bad. And sometimes you come in and go, Liverpool scored in the 93rd minute and won 1-0, and you think, oh, not again. But I caught some of the end of the programme just before there, and I don't know which lady it was who said it about. We go again, and I thought it was a great comment, which was like she absolutely hated it, and that's the kind of same thing probably all those years ago, but it wasn't quite into the media at that time.
Yeah, Ruisha Littlejohn plays for Ireland and Aston Villa, and a proper character, I think, as well.
Well, I could tell. I was fascinated listening to her, but just, when she said it, I was laughing. We go again. Some of this, it's like frightening, isn't it? We go again. What on earth is that?
I know. It's like they're trying to be more bland with each passing year, somehow managing to do it, which is the extraordinary thing. And even when you were being chased, which is a nice spot to be, and I guess the place Man City are in, but even being chased when you knew realistically, even if you didn't say publicly, but say you knew January, February, well, got the league wrapped up again, was it a little bit meh? The following 2, 3, 4 months, was there not even then a sense of lethargy or going through the motions?
Well, it would depend, because you might be going for the FA Cup, and obviously also, on occasions for the European Cup as well. And the way that Liverpool were set up, the likes of Ronnie Moran and Joe Fagan would go absolutely bananas at you if they thought you were just going out and going through the motions. And the other thing, I think at Liverpool, we probably had 17 or 18 players for obviously 11 places. So you always really did feel that you're under pressure all the time, and a couple of iffy performances and you could be left out and you might not get back in the team for a few months. So there was still that pressure there, most definitely. The one I enjoyed the most was the first season, because on Boxing Day, so this was 1981-82, on Boxing Day we played Man City at home. People won't remember, but Liverpool's pitch was a bog. It was hopeless. We got beat 3-1. Brucey didn't have the best of games, shall we say. And we came in, so we were 14th in the league. Boxing Day night, Joe Fagan came in and went absolutely ballistic at all of us. I'd never heard it before. I'd only been there, 4 or 5 months. And even the look on some of the other players, they hadn't heard it on a regular basis. And he just went bonkers. It was like, wow. And so we then went on an unbeaten run, which I think the current team just beat the other week. I don't know if it was 20 games or something or whatever. And we ended up winning. We ended up winning the league on the last day of the season. Now that is fab. I can absolutely tell you that is brilliant when that happens. So the last game of the season, Tottenham at home. I think Forest were at Ipswich. Ipswich was second. If we lost and Ipswich won at home against Forest, we'd obviously come second. But we managed to win, although Glenn Hoddle scored a wonder goal in the first half. Honestly, an absolute worldie.
Do you know what? I'm so glad you mentioned that randomly. BT Sport did a documentary on Glenn Hoddle.
Did he show the goal?
I don't know if they showed that goal.
I think they did, because I think I might have seen some of it.
Okay. They must have shown... Don't want to over-egg this now.
Yeah.
But they must have... This was Glenn Hoddle reflecting on his heart attack and almost dying. Going back to Monaco and visiting Spurs, and he was hanging out with Ozzy Ardiles. That was kind of the thrust of the documentary. They must have shown 20 goals that I hadn't seen before of Hoddle's that were jaw-dropping. I mean, jaw-dropping.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, he was genuinely against us. He never really performed because a certain Mr. Souness would be... in the vicinity. And Graham Roberts, who obviously tried to wade in at times, and of all people, Kenny sorted him out a few times.
Right.
But that day, I was playing in midfield alongside Graham, and he just got the ball I don't know, it felt like about 30 yards out at least. And he just looked and he hit this thing, and it was like, wow, I was stood right behind it. I almost wanted to say, oh, that's unbelievable.
Yeah.
But obviously because of the course of the game and everything, it didn't quite work that way. But it was just a sensational goal. But we ended up winning 3-1, Joe, and I'm so glad I mentioned it now, because I scored the equaliser and made the second goal, but apart from that, didn't do very much.
I presume, would Glenn Hoddle have been much more appreciated in this era and had a better career? Do you think? Yeah.
He would have been a real superstar. We had this thing with him at Liverpool where, and it was with Tottenham, that generally like this, the north of Watford and the crumpled. You put them under pressure, and a few tackles went in, etc. at Anfield, and they crumpled.
Yeah.
And they regularly did. To be honest, I mean, they could be real. I think they were called Fancy Dans at home. I think it was one of the nicknames for them, and they had some good players, but he was a top player. I remember him telling me that when he went to Monaco, and they lived in a hotel, didn't he, like most players, but apparently In the hotel, it also had like a boutique. It had all kinds of shops and everything, and they just signed for everything, and they never paid a penny.
Right.
Like his wife would go in the shop and buy a new dress. When I say buy, well, obviously not. And they just signed for it. And then Glenn said after a while, we realised that the Prince, Rainier, he copped the bill for them. And happy days, that must have been.
It's nice.
Yeah.
Well, do you know, in the documentary, man, he flourished in Monaco. Played some unbelievable football and is like still a legend there and beloved there. And, you know, that style of football suited him more. Anyway,
sure.
That's a hell of a tangent. So, Mo Salah was looking incredibly stylish in his GQ photo shoot there. And, so what he said was, I'm not looking for anything outlandish. It's with the club. I want to stay. But there was a sternness to Salah. He was saying, it's up to them. It's up to the administration.
Yeah.
I've seen reports of 300 grand a week. He's apparently on 200k a week at the moment. I've also seen today up to 480 grand a week reported. So I don't know what his idea of outlandish is. Turning 30... There's a treat, like Liverpool can afford to pay him if they wanted 400 or 450 grand a week. They can afford to, but it's the knock-on effect, and that's what they're weighing up at the moment. What's your read on the situation?
Yeah, they don't want to set a precedent, do they? And you know, what do you say? He's 30 now, is he?
Turning 30 this year.
Yeah, which actually, 30, 15 years ago, you go, ooh, he's 30. That's a little bit of a worry, but as we know now, players are so much fitter and they're so much better, you know, in their early 30s, probably even up to 35 at times. The way that they're looked after and fitness regimes and diets and kind of stuff like that. But I think you just got to be very, very careful because Marnie's contract must be up soon, is it not? Mane's.
I'll have a look.
I think so. So you know, the club obviously has limits. It's building the new stand, obviously, as well, which is going to cost them, I don't know, 50, 60, 70 million, whatever it's going to be. So they've got to be careful. But I think, you know, and I mean, this is kind of, I've never heard this as in, you know, in writing or anything, but always around the club, it's been, well, you know what, the Chinese would buy this lot for $1 billion. But saying they buy it for $1 billion and doing it, and then would you want to sell to the Chinese anyway? It's completely different. But you got to be very, very, very careful. I think they're just weighing absolutely everything up. I mean, what if you gave him 450 grand a week, and then he gets injured for 6 months or something? Although, of course, he's not really ever been injured since he's been there. But you know what Lady Luck can be like sometimes, can't you?
Mane, by the way, will come to an end of a 5-year deal next season. And he's on a paltry 100 grand a week, so he's going to want some more as well.
Pauper. He's a pauper.
Yeah. I still think they can't let him go though, can they, Salah? They can't watch him tear it up for the next 4 or 5 years somewhere else.
No, they can't. I just wonder sometimes if they think who would take him. But you can't run that risk because you know I mean the likes of the Barca and Real Madrid. They're still in a mess. Whatever they're saying and doing, they're absolutely still in a mess. So, Paris Saint-Germain.
Oh, you just hope, even for his sake, surely someone would say, don't go there. It's a basket case.
Well, and the other thing is, and it's easy for me to say this sat in my armchair, but you know, how much money do you want?
450 grand a week. No, I take your point. I take your point. Yeah, I do take your point.
Yeah, you know, and I always remember quite a few years ago, David Pleat said to me he's like one of the deep thinkers in the game. David Pleat always has been, and he rings you up all the time asking about games you've been to and players and all that. He's not really involved anyway. He just loves football, but he always used to say to me, he said, you can only wear one suit at a time. How many meals you want in a day, and how many cars can you drive? But obviously it's changed somewhat.
Yeah. And it must be galling if he's been called the best player in the world, or certainly the best in the league, and he knows what everybody else is getting. And Liverpool are doing very well, you know.
Yeah, that would make you peeved, wouldn't it? But I'm sure they'll come to some compromise. I can't believe that they wouldn't. I think it would be a big mistake if they didn't sign him.
Yeah, and Klopp wouldn't be happy. You know, you mentioned you don't think Liverpool or Chelsea are going to do any great deals in January. Do you think if Klopp at the moment, when he looks at Liverpool, Does he need 2 or 3 or 4 squad players, or if it's an either or kind of a case here, does he need 2 or 3 or 4 squad players, or does he need somebody of a superstar stature to go in somewhere in the starting 11? When you look at that starting 11, is there a vacancy?
I think the latter.
Oh yeah, where about midfield?
Yeah, sort of. I hate to say it, number 10, but everyone says number 10. But yeah, that sort of position, very attack-minded anyway. Definitely, because obviously the kids are coming through, aren't they? And stuff, and I think it looks like they're going to be the good players anyway. But it looks like they're all going to kind of train on, as it were. And he can shift his midfield about now, can't he? He's got quite a lot of players. I just wish Thiago was 5 years younger, because he's been brilliant this season. I just love watching him play. I find him amazing because he's just got this radar, and he can't really run, and his socks are down, and it's old-fashioned, and he just knows where everybody in his team is on the pitch. It's just fabulous to watch. But they've now got plenty of players in midfield, I feel.
Have you seen much of Manchester United under Ralph Rangnick?
No, I haven't. Only snippets, really, to be honest with you. I thought he'd come in and straight away there would be a big difference. So I don't really know what's gone on there, whether it's going to take him time to affect the changes to the way they play. And I hated that the story that came out last week. Half the squad don't like him. They think he's this, they think he's that. Joe, you know what that is, don't you? That's half the squad who aren't playing, which always happens in football clubs. That's how all the stories get out. The stories don't get out from the players who are playing really, really well and are idolised. It's from the ones who are in and out of the team, etc., and feel hard done by. That's always the case. But I mean, how long's it been there? 6 weeks?
Yeah, but it's been really bad though.
Is what?
It's been really bad.
Oh, it has been
genuinely
really bad.
Terrible. Yeah.
But I think that's just showing you how deep seated that it is, and it may well be that he might let some of the superstars, so-called superstars, he might let some of them go. Just because to get a team that he wants, and he wants to play this pressing way. And I don't know. I think you look at Manchester United, and it's kind of like the Harlem Globetrotters without the success, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, and the other thing is the players are looking at him saying, well, you don't really have the power to let me go. I mean, you're out of here in a few months anyway. Buddy.
Yeah, well, I don't... Yeah, well, yeah, possibly. So that's the Pochettino thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, he possibly is, but we'll see. I still think they'll finish fourth, mind.
Well, they have the talent, I guess, to go on a run. Marcus Rashford's been talked about all week, so he was genuinely eye-catchingly disconsolate almost against Aston Villa. Body language was terrible. He was playing very badly. He hasn't scored in 11 games.
He hasn't, but you know what? He hasn't kicked on, Joe. He was a better player when he first came into the team. And I mean, it was unbelievable because he came from nowhere, didn't he? He was literally just one of the kids when I think it was Van Gaal, wasn't it?
Yeah, Van Gaal saw something in him and brought him through brilliantly.
Well, yeah, that's his story. the other story I heard was they were basically down to bare bones.
Fair enough.
And said, well, take this lad, and we'll make up the numbers almost, but just take him and have a look at him. He's got something, but we haven't really seen what. And then obviously he's kicked on. And I mean, the easy thing to say is everything, all this work he's done off the field and everything has been brilliant. And then sometimes you're thinking, well, has that kind of taken over a little bit? And has he lost some of his hunger? Because you wouldn't want to play against him. If, a fit and hungry player of his ability, you wouldn't want to play against him. But it all looks a little bit like, oh, well, I'm not in the team. I'll probably get in next week, come on a sub. But they're all a bit like that, are they not?
Yeah, a little bit. With Rashford, I mean, he put out a statement, again, we'll roll our eyes after our previous conversation, but he put out a statement which wasn't bland, and he was just saying, there's lots of rumours about me and my attitude, and trust me, I'm not happy with how I'm playing, and I'm going to put this right. Words to that effect. And it was actually a pretty good statement. Do you know, here's a clip for you. This is, and it goes against what we're saying about Mo Salah being over 30, but just one of the lads, when we were putting the show together earlier on this afternoon, they remembered, this is random, right? But who knows? They remembered Sam Allardyce with Alan Brazil on TalkSport a couple of years ago, and look, it's very fashionable to roll eyes at Sam Allardyce, but I suspect he has a good feel for the game. This is what he said quite a number of years ago, and this is when Rashford was new on the scene and playing great, and everybody thought this guy is the future for the next 10 years. And here's what Allardyce had to say, and just keep in mind Rashford's, I suppose, is people are saying it's his work rate, but I do wonder if it's his body at the moment. Here's Allardyce.
Is he going to make past 27?
No, probably very difficult to get to 30 because of the demand physically and mentally and the fatigue that he will suffer. He'll have 3 weeks a year off. That's it. And he'll play all over the world because there's no pre-season anymore. They go playing straight away across these tournaments. He'll play for his country in the summer, and he'll get barely 3 weeks off. And I think when you look at it, the wear and tear that is by 25, he will have niggles. Even if he doesn't get any major injuries, the knees and the ankles, the hips, the backs will start being a little bit of a problem as he goes on. Not stopping playing, but I think later on in life it would bring his career to an end quicker than maybe before. But if you look at the Premier League now, Alan, I think there's less players over 30 playing now than ever.
Now, that last point we checked isn't quite true about the players over 30. It's held pretty steady. But so he was saying that, that was his worry for Rashford, and Rashford hit 25. He's currently 24. Who knows? Like, that's the thing. Who knows what's going on? It could be, as you said, the commitments off the field. It could be something else in his personal life. Or it could be a young body just, which has been, too much has been asked of it over the last number of years.
No, when you look at him, he is quite statuesque, isn't he? You don't look at him and think he's just like a bag of bones.
He looks super strong. Now, he had the shoulder surgery after the Euros, and actually that gave him a good break. He didn't play till October. So
but the shoulder injury it doesn't stop you in terms of your finesse and your fitness and your running and all that kind of stuff.
Well, he said it did last year, and that's why he had to have the surgery.
The only thing I would say, I'm not. Do you know what surgery he had? Because if it was for dislocation, that does affect you, because I had that right at the end.
Right.
And even though you have an operation, it's called putty plat, where they oversew a muscle, so your actual muscle doesn't come out anymore, but it is loose. And sometimes if you fell over, it felt like it came out, but it didn't. So what I'm trying to say was, you always knew it was there. It was a constant. So whether it's that might be something to do with it. But I'm not. I understand what Big Sam says, but I'm not sure that's going to be the way that it is. And he doesn't start regularly, does he?
No, it doesn't quite tally. It was just an interesting comment, and it jogged our memory. But it
was interesting because he wasn't talking about himself, Sam, was he?
It's just hard to work it out with Rashford, because you do get the impression he's so invested in Manchester United, local boy, loves the club, and yet it looks like he has an attitude problem on the pitch, but that doesn't tally with everything else about him. That's why it makes you wonder if physically he just doesn't feel himself, or if something's going on.
Well, and I wonder, I'll throw one in, which is, does he know his best, or does anybody know his best position?
Well, is it coming in off the left side? No?
Yeah, but maybe he looks at Ronaldo and thinks, well, all right, you're a goal scorer, and outstanding goal scorer. This is Rashford thinking that I'm thinking about him. You think, well, I can play straight down the middle. I'm younger, I'm faster, I'm fitter, and all those kind of things. You just don't know, do you? And maybe is it a case of that? When he leaves Old Trafford in terms of the training ground, is he doing stuff all day?
Yeah,
when he could just be, like most footballers, he'd be lying on the backsides watching Netflix after they pick the kids up and all that kind of stuff. So, you just don't know. I mean, he looks. I don't think he's a drinker, because the stories would be out. Obviously, he doesn't. He's obviously got a great diet, because look at his body and everything. maybe he's just, I don't know.
Yeah,
It's one of many things, isn't it?
Yeah, it's one of many. I mean, it's speculation. He does look in great shape. Do you think, as a last one, Ronaldo arriving at the club? So on the one hand, people said, well, Ronaldo's going to arrive. All the young players are going to see how hard he trains, his diet, the professionalism's off the charts. They're going to see how hard a great player works. It's going to be amazing. And yet, too often I've looked at Ronaldo this season and he's got his hands on his hips, he's giving out to teammates, he's storming down tunnels or sulking off a pitch if he gets substituted. He doesn't press. And so you wonder how good an example he has been for those around him. Difficult to know when we're not on the inside, but who knows what the Ronaldo effect has been as well, because he is going to influence those around him.
Well, here's one. Has Fernandes been the same player since Ronaldo arrived?
No, like that. No. And I've never felt more sorry for a player taking a penalty than the time Bruno Fernandes missed that one with Ronaldo behind him and straight away, right, you're off penos now. I mean, that's outrageous. Talk about trying to undercut you're undercut your best player.
Yeah, I know.
So
I know. I wonder whether there's, even though obviously both boys played for Portugal, there's a bit of a frisson there between those two. But you just look at, I mean, you know, Harry Maguire, not the quickest, but generally, you know, really good, solid centre-back, and he looks all over the place. And Varane, I mean, I did say at the time when Varane signed that, you know, he missed quite a lot of games at Real Madrid, and I think he's one of those that just, he doesn't get really serious injuries, but he gets injuries where he's out for like 6 or 8 weeks, and then he's got to get fit for another 6 or 8 weeks to come back.
Yeah.
And those kind of things. And I don't know, maybe they've just lost their hunger a little bit.
Yeah, there's something up anyway.
Yeah.
Antonio Conte, by the way, last point. So Daniel Levy was on holidays in the Bahamas. He got back. He was hanging out with Joe Lewis over there, the Spurs owner, and apparently he met Conte on Monday with their football director, Fabio Paratici. And what Conte had done was an assessment of the squad, and here's what our need list. And this is, welcome back to work, Daniel. And this is David Heitner in The Guardian. So what Conte wants is centre half, central midfielder, a right-sided player, and it seems Adama Traore's caught his eye a little bit.
Surely not.
Yeah, apparently these are the reports, and and a backup striker as well. So that's what, 4 players. Let's call it 50 million a player. Is Daniel Levy going to hand over the guts at 200 million? I wonder. And if he doesn't, I'm not sure Antonio will take it too well.
Oh well, no. Antonio walk out the door one if he wants. He ain't bothered that.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
Football